Ling Han returned to the Alchemy Association and began to study the soul-departing pill. He only had a little bit of the medicine in his hands, but for the Alchemy Emperor, this was already enough. He concentrated on studying and searched extensively for information. Gradually, he had some idea, but he was still a distance away from completing the antidote of the poison. At the same time, he didn't forget to cultivate. If unlocking the extraordinary 8 meridians was considered a prodigy, then prodigy was also divided into various levels. A 20 meridians was a super genius. What Ling Han wanted to pursue was invincibility. He wanted to open up more meridians and surpass everyone. Now, he was qualified to do so. However, true meridians at least had a diagram. There was also a legend about the extraordinary meridians. Yet, the path that Ling Han wanted to take now was a complete blank. He channeled his 20 meridians, allowing the mystical power to circulate in his body over and over again. After channeling it countless times, Ling Han suddenly experienced enlightenment. If he wanted to exert force now, he would have to mobilize all his meridians, and then gather his power. It was like 20 people were using a rope to pull a large ox. In that case, there would definitely be some problem with the coordination. It is clearly 20 portions of power, but when they are stacked together, it may be equivalent to 19 portions, or even 18 portions in fact. If these meridians could be combined into one, then there would be no power wasted. But how do I connect these meridians together? More meridians. This. Ling Han continued to gain enlightenment. The advantage of having powerful spiritual power was that he could examine his own body, allowing him to quickly outline a diagram within his body. If there are no meridians here, then I'll force one out. Begin! Ling Han set up the spirit-gathering formation and began to break through his meridians. Were there more meridians in the human body? That may not be the case, and even if there was, could it possibly be in the position that Ling Han wanted? The possibility of that was naturally even lower. Ling Han struck again and again. He had a belief, and that was if there was no path, he would carve out a path. Hiss, to forcefully open up a meridian in the body. This is really painful. Ling Han gritted his teeth. The mystical power was randomly crashing within him, making him feel extremely uncomfortable. Pooh! He spat out a mouthful of blood, feeling his vitality drop to rock bottom. Great loss of blood and chi? I'm not trying to break through to the blood transformation tier, so why is it like this? Even this can hurt my life force? I need to quickly take the blood replenishing pill. Ling Han took out alchemical pills and ingested them. He didn't give all the blood replenishing pills to Sun Jianfeng, but kept 2 for himself. This kind of treasured pill to replenish blood and chi could be used for self-protection. He didn't expect it to come in handy so quickly. After ingesting an alchemical pill, Ling Han instantly felt his body become warm and his vitality recover. Again, Ling Han had an indescribable stubbornness about strength. He once again began to open up his meridians, or rather, create one. Time and time again, he failed. When he finished the blood-replenishing pills, he had no choice but to stop and concoct new ones. In the eyes of others, they were extremely precious blood-replenishing pills, but in his case, they were like sweets that he could eat as he liked. It was unknown how many times he had failed. All of a sudden, Ling Han felt his body tremble. It was a sudden and soothing sensation. To his surprise, he discovered that Zuyang Bright Gastric Meridian had actually connected with the Han Shaoyang 3 Burning Meridian. In his head, they were connected by a tiny meridian. This new meridian was very short. Even if it was opened, it would not have much effect on Ling Han's total reserves of mystical power, but its significance was extraordinary, because the 2 true meridians were actually connected. He could do it. Ling Han's confidence increased greatly. He continuously opened up this new meridian. Because it was too short, he soon reached the pinnacle. Let's test out the power. The Alchemist Society didn't have a strength tester. Which alchemists didn't think of themselves as noble and aloof, so how could they be using their precious hands to practice martial arts and for target practice? Hence, Ling Han could only have someone by one back, the kind of high-level one that could withstand the bombardment of 500,000 kilograms. He went to test it out, and his power was as high as 310,000 kilograms. After opening up 20 meridians, his power was fixed at 300,000 kilograms of strength. Now, he had only opened a very short meridian, and he actually had an additional 10,000 kilograms of strength. It's not the meridian itself that's taking effect. Instead, it's communicating with two true meridians, which is equivalent to fusing them into one. The mystical power has completely fused together. As expected, 20 meridians isn't the end. In other words, it's not perfect enough. Again, after having experienced success once, Ling Han was naturally filled with confidence. This kind of success was extremely important to the stability of one's mentality and the increase of confidence. After a few hours, he found another thin and short meridian and connected two new meridians again. After completely expanding, his power improved again. Time slowly passed. One after another, small meridians were discovered, opened up, and expanded to the extreme. If the 12 true meridians and 8 extraordinary meridians were the main branches, then these small meridians were the side branches, continuously connecting the main meridians. 7 days later, Ling Han's eyes suddenly snapped open. Wang! A bright light flashed through his eyes, causing the entire room to light up. A smile appeared at the corners of his lips. The 20 meridians have all been connected, forming a circle. The surge of mystical power is now completely synchronized, without even the slightest conflict or waste. In this way, what level can my power reach? Ling Han went to test again, and the result stunned him. 500,000 kilograms. He had reached the terrifying extent of 500,000 kilograms of strength. He was absolutely certain that he had already surpassed the first change blood transformation tier. An ordinary first change blood transformation tier definitely could not possibly reach the strength of 500,000 kilograms. Even a second change could barely achieve it. He was clearly only at the meridian opening tier, but in terms of raw power, he was comparable to the second change blood transformation tier. If this was told to others, it was guaranteed that no one would believe it. However, my power pool hasn't increased by much. These new meridians are too short and can't accommodate much power. Therefore, what I've increased is only explosive power. If I really fight at full strength, it can only last for about an hour. If I have to use the overlapping layer of power again, with the highest overlapping of 20 layers, I can only battle for 3 to 5 minutes at most. This can also be considered as blood boiling, but it's a little special. It was indeed special. If someone's blood boiled once, it would take at least 5 to 6 hours to recover. But in his case, as long as the power in his body could be replenished, he could continue to unleash explosive power. When I advance into the blood transformation tier, and can boil my blood and qi, what kind of heights would my power reach? I'm really looking forward to it. However, Ling Han had overlooked a problem, and that was this strength testing tool could only measure the power of 500,000 kilograms of strength at most. If it exceeded 500,000 kilograms, then what would be displayed would only be 500,000 kilograms. Was his strength really 500,000 kilograms? I have also some grasp of the antidote formula. Now, I need to gather medicinal ingredients and concoct alchemical pills. I'll only know if they're useful after ingesting them. Every night, when the medicinal effects take effect, I would feel a pain as if my heart was being squeezed. It's really uncomfortable. Ling Han moved to prepare the pill recipe, but even if the storehouse of the Alchemist Society was open to him, he still hadn't gathered all the ingredients he needed. They're still lacking a total of 8 different ingredients, which are incredibly precious and valuable. There's no one selling them, or that they are extremely difficult to harvest, and do not have much use either. The quality-price ratio is too high, and no medicine harvester would be willing to harvest them from dangerous locations. I can only do it myself. As for those closest to me, there might be 9 flames grass in the Great Green Mountains. The 9 flames grass was one of the 8 ingredients he lacked. There are still 8 days until the deadline of half a month that the old man spoke of, so I can take a trip to the Great Green Mountains first. Ling Han pondered for a moment, then decided to go to the Great Green Mountains. Due to the fact that the members of Team 7 were either dead or injured, and they did not have a full team, they would not be going out on missions for the moment. Everyone was on leave, so Ling Han was still quite free. He also decided to wait for the danger befalling the city. No matter what it was, when it was over, he would resign from his position as deputy captain and focus on his cultivation. After some thought, Ling Han decided to bring Huan Shui with him. Who knows, Hu Qiu might not have given up yet, and although it was safe for the little female attendant to stay in the Alchemist Society, she couldn't hide there forever and not go out, right? Thus, he decided to bring Huan Shui for a trip. Ling Han told Huan Shui to make some preparations. Then, he saw that the little female attendant was carrying a huge luggage on her back, like a thief who had returned with a full load. In the past, he probably had this kind of image as well. Ling Han couldn't help but grit his teeth. How embarrassing. The two of them set out. After leaving the city, they headed east. The Great Green Mountains were very close to Huju City, and the straight-line distance was only about 100 km. However, this journey was really very difficult to travel. The route was too uneven, and there would be occasional large rivers appearing, so it was absolutely impossible to drive there. Thankfully, Huan Shui had also reached 10 meridians, and even with such massive luggage, it was easy for her. A few hours later, they arrived at the Great Green Mountains. The Great Green Mountains were primitive and rough, but there were no powerful demonic beasts here, because the 4 great banners would occasionally come to sweep the area. It was practically impossible for demonic beasts above 10 meridians to exist. Of course, there were also extremely dangerous places in the Great Green Mountains. Even extreme bone tears wouldn't venture deep into the Great Green Mountains, but as long as they didn't go there naturally wouldn't be any danger. "Let's go," Ling Han said. "Oh." The little female attendant nodded and hurriedly followed. The 9 Flames grass was located halfway up the Great Green Mountains. Merely in terms of height, that place was already very dangerous. Ling Han naturally headed straight for his destination. However, the Great Green Mountains were massive, really massive, and the mountain path was extraordinarily difficult to walk. It would take at least a day and night to reach their destination. Ling Han paused. "What is it, young master?" Huan Shui asked blankly. "There are sounds of battle," Ling Han said. "Come, let's go and take a look." "Oh." Huan Shui nodded. In any case, Ling Han could do whatever he wanted. Ling Han led the way in front, and soon, Huan Shui also heard the sound. She could still find the right direction, even without Ling Han leading the way. They passed through the dense forest, and an empty land appeared ahead of them. And in this empty land, a battle was presently taking place. 5 young men and women were ganging up on a demonic beast. This demonic beast was a 9-toed wolf, and its abilities were completely displayed on its body. That was, every time it increased the power of 1 meridian, it would gain an extra toe. Now, this demonic beast had 9 toes, which meant that it was in the tier of 9 meridians. Under normal circumstances, demonic beasts were stronger than human cultivators of the same cultivation level, because they had an inherent advantage such as faster speed, stronger power, and basically had powerful defense. Thus, usually only 2 or 3 people would be able to win if they teamed up to battle against a demonic beast. However, this time only 2 of the 5 men and women reached the 9 meridians, while the other 3 reached the 8 meridians. Thus, even if the 5 of them joined forces, they were still locked in a fierce battle with the demon wolf. It was an extremely precarious situation. "Calm down, don't panic. We have the upper hand, and we will definitely win." Among the 5 of them, an older man said, stabilizing their morale. Actually, he was not very old either. At most, he was only 16 or 17 years old. Indeed, as long as they could stabilize the situation, their chances of winning were at least 80%. The other 4 men and women nodded respectively. Under the young man's control, the situation gradually stabilized. However, right at this moment a sudden change took place. That demon wolf's whole body emitted a white light, exuding a powerful aura. Not good. This demonic beast has mutated, and is about to advance into 10 meridians. The slightly older youth exclaimed in shock, and hurriedly said, "Everyone, retreat." They were unafraid of a 9 meridians demonic beast, but once it advanced into a 10 meridians demonic beast, it would be able to release its power and its battle prowess would increase, and not just by a little bit. They wanted to retreat, but that demonic beast had been ganged up on for so long, and had sustained considerable injuries. With the vicious nature of wild beasts, how could it possibly allow them to leave? It jumped, and it was as if its body was flying. Furthermore, the change was still continuing. On its 4 limbs, the first full toe was growing out. Even if it became at 10 meridians, its power wouldn't immediately increase greatly, but its power could be released. This was the greatest change. The 5 men and women all paled in fright. How could they have possibly imagined that this 9 meridians demonic beast would actually break through at such a crucial time? They were really unlucky. Huan Shui, go and help, Ling Han said. For better or worse, he was still Xianxia Banner's deputy captain, so he naturally couldn't stand by and watch. Yes, the little female attendant replied, and immediately rushed out. Ling Han couldn't help but feel speechless. This little girl was really a little silly. Why would you be carrying your luggage to a fight? Pang! Huan Shui had already moved. She threw a punch and a force was released, delivering a terrifying punch. Influenced by Ling Han, she was also more inclined to use her fists. The 5 men and women were all dumbfounded. What had they seen? A beautiful woman appeared, carrying a huge luggage on her back. Then she threw a punch at the demonic beast. Before they could even come to their senses, they saw a bang, and the demonic beast was sent flying. She unleashed her power. A 10 meridians elite. Yaya! Huan Shui attacked repeatedly, blasting the demon wolf. The demon wolf had only just advanced to 10 meridians, and the only difference between it and being 9 meridians was that it could release its power, so how could it possibly be a match for Huan Shui, who had advanced to 10 meridians many days ago? Very quickly, its spine was broken with a single punch, and it had become a dead wolf. Thank you for your help, miss. The 5 of them hurriedly expressed their thanks. Although Huan Shui was already at 10 meridians, it couldn't change her mentality as a little female attendant. She hurriedly bent down to return the greeting, and instantly, the huge baggage completely slid past her. This appearance was a little funny. Ling Han walked out and said, "Let's go. Who do you think you are?" Immediately, a young man jumped out, pointing at Ling Han. "What right do you have to issue commands?" "That's my young master," Huan Shui said weakly. The 5 of them looked at Ling Han, then looked at Huan Shui. They all shook their heads in disbelief. Ling Han smiled faintly. "I saved your lives, and this is how you repay me?" "Hey, we were saved by this lady," a young man immediately said. "And?" The other 4 all nodded. They weren't very old, and the slightly older youth was only 16 or 17 years old. The other 4 were even younger, at most 15 or 16 years old. At this age, they admired heroes the most. Huan Shui saved them from the tiger's mouth, and in their hearts, she was like a goddess. How could they accept that such a goddess still had a master? This was especially the case for the 3 young men. Their eyes were filled with adoration as they looked at Huan Shui, and it was even more impossible for them to accept reality. "But I'm really young master's maid." Huan Shui nodded vigorously. These people were so strange. With repeated emphasis, these people finally accepted the reality, but they were even angrier. "You're too despicable. You actually made Miss Huan Shui do such heavy work," they reprimanded. "Just look at how much load Huan Shui was carrying. You're abusing her. Name a price. How much do you want for redeeming Miss Huan Shui's freedom?" Huan Shui hurriedly shook her head like a rattle drum. "Young master didn't abuse me, and I don't want to leave young master." She felt really apprehensive of these youngsters who thought themselves to be righteous. Hurriedly, she said to Ling Han, "Young master, let's leave quickly." Ling Han couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself. However, he nodded and said, "All right." The 2 of them broke into a run, their speed extremely fast. How could the 5 youths possibly catch up to them? They stopped after running for a bit. "We definitely can't watch as Miss Huan Shui falls into a tiger's den. They must belong to Huju City. When we return, we'll investigate. We must find out the background of that man. We must save Miss Huan Shui." The 5 of them were burning with fighting spirit. In their boring lives, they immediately had another goal to strive for. After Ling Han ran for a while, he said, "All right, there's no need to run. These people aren't chasing us." Huan Shui panted heavily. "Young master, those people are really too terrifying." They actually wanted her to leave young master's side. They were all bad people. Ling Han laughed loudly. "Let's rest for a while before continuing on our way." Very soon they continued on their way. The path in the mountains was extremely difficult to travel. By the time the sky darkened, they still had to cover less than half of the distance to their destination. Because of the towering trees, this place would be pitch black at night. It would be an exaggeration to say that one couldn't even see their own fingers of a stretched hand. But it was indeed not much better. The 2 of them stopped and prepared to eat something. They would continue their journey tomorrow morning. Fortunately, they were actually next to a rabbit's nest, and Huan Shui caught 2 big fat rabbits. The little female attendant happily started a fire, washed the rabbit clean with clear water, and began to prepare dinner. Soon, the roasted rabbit emitted a fragrance. The meat became golden and zzz fat was bubbling. Even Ling Han's appetite was stirred. Huan Shui was indeed quite skilled. Say se. Right at this moment, the bushes ahead of them suddenly shook. Ling Han stood up. What wild beast was about to appear? However, after waiting for a while, there was still no reaction. He sat back down, and with a rustling sound, the bushes moved again. Was it toying with them? Ling Han suddenly unleashed his power and pounced in that direction. He raised a fist and pung, he delivered a punch strike. Right now, he possessed a strength of 500,000 kilograms. When he threw this punch, it was as if a hurricane had been created, flattening the area of 3 meters from where his punch strike landed. There was nothing. Ling Han was astounded. He only saw grass flying, and as for the rest, there was nothing. What was going on here? Young master. Huan Shui hurriedly jumped over as well. Ling Han shook his head, turned around, and was about to return, but his eyes were fixed on the scene. The rabbit that was being roasted on the fire was gone. It was gone. The meat naturally wouldn't run away by itself for no reason. Thus, it was either that it had been taken by someone or that it was a demonic beast. But whether it was a human or a beast, these abilities were quite extraordinary. Such a cute pig. The little female attendant suddenly called out. Ling Han followed the little female attendant's gaze and saw a pink pig the size of a kitten walking over, swaying its behind. This small pig was really fat, with an extremely round body. It was completely pink in color, and its tail was thin and short. If it was a big fat pig, perhaps some people would feel disgusted, but this little pink pig would only make people feel that it was cute. At least, Huan Shui had already fallen for him. She immediately picked up the little pink pig, her eyes twinkling. Ling Han looked on, yet saliva was growing in his mouth. He just happened to be feeling hungry, and a little pink pig had delivered itself up to his doorstep. This was the will of heaven. The little pink pig seemed to have sensed Ling Han's gaze and raised its head to snuffle at Ling Han. Then, it stuffed its head in Huan Shui's chest, looking like it had been frightened. Fuck, has it gained intelligence? After pretending for a while, it actually took the opportunity to take advantage of Huan Shui. You are really capable. Ling Han wanted even more to slaughter this little pink pig. And he'll just make it into a roast suckling pig. Young master, don't eat it, okay? This little piggy is so pitiful. Huan Shui begged Ling Han, her eyes filled with tears. Ling Han sighed and said, "Fine, I won't eat it." Huan Shui was instantly all smiles as she hugged the little pink pig. Her maternal instincts were already out of control. Ling Han looked at the little pig. The little pink pig would occasionally glance at him, filled with pride. Fuck, a pig could actually be so human-like? Ling Han had not forgotten how the 2 roasted rabbits had disappeared for no reason, and from the look of things now, this criminal was it. This guy first created a diversion to lure them away, then took the opportunity to steal the 2 roasted rabbits. After eating, it would appear again in a pitiful manner, causing the little female attendant's maternal instincts to overflow. And, in terms of intelligence, this pig was not stupid at all. What Ling Han cared about was, how could this pig's speed be so fast? Huan Shui, let me see the pig, he said. Oh, Huan Shui was a little reluctant, but she still handed the little pink pig over to Ling Han. Goo! Goo! The little pink pig let out a cry like a pig going to be slaughtered, and kept dodging into Huan Shui's arms. Ling Han grabbed the little pink pig. He looked it up and down, but didn't find anything special about this pig. This wasn't a demonic beast at all, and it didn't possess any power at all. This was very strange. If it was really an ordinary piglet, how had it managed to survive on the Great Green Mountains? If it encountered a powerful carnivore or demonic beast, how could it possibly survive by acting cute? If he didn't have the little female attendant with him, Ling Han really wanted to draw some blood from this little fat pig and study it carefully. But Huan Shui was looking at him pitifully from the sidelines, causing Ling Han to feel as if her eyes were piercing into him. Forget it, he would not make a move for the moment. Ling Han returned the little pink pig to Huan Shui, and the little fat pig immediately crawled into Huan Shui's arms, looking like a scared little pig. What the hell? Ling Han walked around and quickly hunted another goat, handing it over to Huan Shui to be dealt with. It wasn't long before the fragrance wafted over again. Ling Han's appetite was stirred, and he immediately tore off a piece to eat. The little pink pig also moaned, and opened its mouth, looking like it wanted to eat. Huan Shui gently fed the little pink pig. Though this pig was not very big in size, its appetite was incredibly shocking. It ate the meat bite after bite, as if it would never be full, and kept eating. Its stomach was very fat and round, but no matter how much meat it ate, there was no sign that its stomach was bulging, as if it was a bottomless pit. Gluttonous and lecherous. In a short period of time, Ling Han had already discovered 2 special traits of this pig. In summary, it was a piece of trash. The goat meat was very quickly divided up. Ling Han ate almost half of it, and the little pink pig also ate almost half of it. Only then was the remaining eaten by the little female attendant. This pig was indeed a glutton. At night, Huan Shui was afraid that the little pink pig would freeze, so she stuffed this little fat pig between her breasts, making this fat pig happy, its eyes shining. In the middle of the night, the pig began snoring as expected. He really wanted to kill it. On the second day, Ling Han and Huan Shui continued their journey halfway up the mountain. There were no formations here to suppress them, but the natural dangers of mountains and rivers also made it difficult to travel, and were filled with danger. Furthermore, there were also powerful demonic beasts here, with many 10 meridians and above, and some even of the blood transformation tier. There was nothing that could be done. The terrain here was too dangerous. It was difficult for the 4 great banners to set out here. Furthermore, how could true elites possibly come here? Thus, there was no sign of anyone here at all. However, the existence of the 9 Flames grass here was only a myth. More than 20 years ago, when Huju City had just been established, a large number of elites had been dispatched to sweep through the surrounding area, and someone had discovered the 9 Flames grass here. More than 20 years had already passed, and who knew if there was still any 9 Flames grass left? Who knows, amidst the drastic change in the environment, it might have already been destroyed. The place was too big. Ling Han and Huan Shui tried their best to search for it, but if they wanted to scour this area, they wouldn't be able to do so without spending at least 10 days to half a month's time. It would take too long. Goo! Goo! The little pink pig cried out. What are you doing? Ling Han glared at it. This kind of perverted pig should be slaughtered and made into a roasted suckling pig. It's hungry, Huan Shui said softly. In just 1 or 2 days, she was already very familiar with the little pig. No, the little pink pig. Eat, eat, eat. All you know to do is eat. Ling Han wiped his mouth. Why don't we just slaughter him and eat roasted suckling pig? No, no. Huan Shui hurriedly shook her head. The little pink pig also glared angrily at Ling Han and howled, looking like it was facing an enemy. You only know how to eat, and only know how to lust. What use is there of you if not to be eaten? Ling Han asked. Woo! Woo! The little pink pig cried out at Ling Han, as if it could understand human language. This pig was indeed quite interesting. Little pig, you must prove that you are useful. Young master does not like useless things. The little female attendant rubbed the little pink pig's head and said earnestly. Little pink pig expressed that it was very hurt. It was not a thing. It raised its head proudly, looking like it could do anything. Little pig, can you really do things? Huan Shui asked in pleasant surprise. Goo goo. Little pink pig nodded vigorously. Fuck, this pig had really gained intelligence. Little pig, young master is looking for 9 flames grass. Do you know where to find it? Huan Shui asked. The little pink pig revealed a pondering expression. After a while, it let out a woo and jumped out of Huan Shui's arms, running towards a specific direction. This guy really knew where the 9 flames grass was? Ling Han and Huan Shui followed him, but after taking a few steps, the little pink pig stopped moving. Its limbs were spread out, and it was sprawled out on the ground. What are you playing at now? Ling Han asked. I'm tired, Huan Shui explained. Tired just like that? Ling Han looked at the distance that this damn pig had walked. It was no more than 300 meters at most. Fuck. He was already so tired that he was sprawled out? What a lazy pig. Let me carry you. Huan Shui picked the little pink pig up. Goo. The little fat pig let out a comfortable cry, rubbing its fat pig head against Huan Shui's chest. Its perverted appearance made Ling Han practically want to hit someone. However, at least this lazy pig was not completely irresponsible. It stretched out its fat hoof and pointed ahead. Huan Shui carried it away, while Ling Han followed behind. The fat pig didn't point forward blindly. Sometimes it would point to the left and sometimes it would point to the right. The path was extremely difficult to walk. After about 2 hours, the fat pig finally stopped making a sound. Ling Han was startled. A blade of grass appeared in front of him. It was about a foot long, and was completely crimson red in color, and in a very large area around it, there was not a single weed growing. 9 flames grass. The 9 flames grass had a very unique trait, and that was how tall it grew. Then, in an area that was 9 times as long as it was, there would be no other grass or trees growing, because in this kind of area the land was inflamed and nothing else could grow. Had this damn fat pig really found the 9 flames grass? Aside from being able to eat, sleep, and slack off, he could actually do some real things. You're quite useful. You didn't eat my food for nothing. Ling Han nodded. He picked up the 9 flames grass and placed it into his luggage. Let's go back. He smiled slightly. The mission this time was extraordinarily smooth. Just like that, he had harvested the 9 flames grass. What breed is this pig? It's quite capable, Ling Han said with a smile. He reached over to grab the fat pig. Woo! The perverted pig let out a sharp cry and dug itself into Huan Shui's chest. However, with how big her chest area was, how was it supposed to hide? Ling Han captured him in a single move. The perverted pig continuously spat at Ling Han. Even though it was only so big, the amount of saliva it spat out was extremely shocking, as if it was raining heavily. Ling Han was caught off guard, and was instantly sprayed all over his head and face. Fuck! You damn pig! I'll kill you! Ling Han was furious and shot out a punch. Goo! The little pink pig hurriedly struggled, but how could it manage to break free? Ling Han's punch landed solidly on it. However, this perverted pig was quite courageous. Not only did it not cower, its saliva spat out even more violently. Pung pung pung. Ling Han threw a series of punches. Poo, piu, piu. The little pink pig was also spitting endlessly. Finally, Ling Han stopped. He tossed the perverted pig over to Huan Shui with a look of surprise on his face. In the beginning, he hadn't used any power, but after a few punches, he had increased his power slightly. However, when his punches landed on the fat pig's body, it was as if they had landed on cotton, soft and without any force. He continued to exert more strength, yet he was still unable to wound this perverted pig in the slightest. Strange, this was extremely strange. No wonder this guy was fat and round, yet was able to live so comfortably on the great green mountains, and had not been picked up for a meal by any wild beast. Even if a blood transformation tier-level demonic beast had come, it probably would not be able to do anything to its physique. Perverted pig. I've really underestimated you. The little pink pig let out snorts from its mouth, as if it was cursing Ling Han. Pervert, what other treasured medicines are here? Bring us to look for them, Ling Han said. This pig was unexpectedly useful. The little pink pig ignored him, and instead buried itself into Huan Xue's chest, revealing only his round behind. This scene was really enough to make one lose control and want to have a roasted suckling pig. Little pig, young master is a grandmaster alchemist, so if you know what treasured medicine there is, you had best tell young master, Huan Xue said from the sidelines. The little pink piggy turned around and surveyed Ling Han from head to toe. Suddenly, it stretched out its limbs, and it released a grunt. This mockery was incredibly obvious. Ling Han couldn't help but be speechless. In the Alchemy Society, who wouldn't respectfully call him Grandmaster Ling? But now, he was actually being mocked by a lecherous lazy pig. Speaking of which, this pig was really strange. The higher the strength of the demonic beast, the more intelligent it would become. Brother Monkey, for example, could speak the language of humans. If it was not for the fact that he was still monkey-like in appearance, what difference would he have with humans? However, this pig clearly didn't have any abilities, yet it was as if he couldn't be killed. Moreover, his intelligence was also very high, so it was simply strange. All right, little piggy, just help young Master Xue, Huan Xue continued. The little pink pig instantly shuddered, as if he could not bear to ignore the gentle words of a beauty, and all the bones in his body had gone soft. It stretched out its hoof and pointed in a direction. Ling Han and Huan Xue immediately advanced. After walking for a while, they actually discovered an old ginseng. This was a yellow ginseng, and it was at least 500 to 600 years old. It was brimming with vitality. A great tonic! Ling Han's eyes lit up. Though he already had 5 Phoenix King Jade fruits after he broke through to blood transformation tier, there would still be second change, third change, and the like, so the more treasures to nourish his blood and chi, the better. Fat pig, you're quite familiar with this place, Ling Han said. If he and Huan Xue were to search, with how remote the place where this old ginseng grew was, they wouldn't be able to find it without 2 to 3 months. He really couldn't tell. This pervert just shamelessly lay on the ground after taking just a few steps, and actually knew so much about this place? I'll call you treasure-hunting pig in future, Ling Han said with a smile. The little pink pig showed a disdainful expression, appearing to be extremely disdainful of this title. Then what's your name? Ling Han asked. The little pink piggy turned its head and released a hoo sound, appearing to be extremely proud. He really knew how to put on airs. Forget it. I'll just call you a perverted pig, or a lazy pig. Ling Han gave up the idea of naming this pig. Under Huan Xue's gentle words, the little pink pig pointed in a specific direction again. But this time, it led the two of them towards the peak of Great Green Mountains. After walking halfway up the mountains, Ling Han frowned deeply. A terrifying pressure enveloped him, causing his heart to tremble. Huan Xue was even worse off. Her entire body was covered in cold sweat, and she trembled continuously. Right at this moment, a purple light suddenly flickered around Ling Han's neck. Instantly, this pressure decreased considerably. It was this purple pendant again. This Li Changdan had really been astonishingly lucky to have picked up such a treasure. However, Li Changdan's luck was clearly over when he encountered his trait of misfortune. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died in his hands. Ling Han scratched his head. He had both the attributes of super luck and super bad luck. If he was provoked, his attribute of bad luck would definitely be the one taking effect. Huan Xue, don't go any further, he said. The little female attendant couldn't withstand this kind of pressure at all. Huan Xue stopped as he said. She indeed couldn't go on anymore. The reason why she could last until now was because Ling Han was by her side. This turned into a powerful belief. Yet the little pink piggy was staring at Ling Han. To be more exact, it was staring at his neck. It pounced towards Ling Han. However, it had clearly overestimated its jumping ability. It had only leaped halfway, when it fell from midair. Goo! It released a squeal like a pig being slaughtered, yet was unable to stop its fate of falling heavily onto the ground. Huan Shui was already weak in the knees, so it was impossible for her to move to catch him. However, while Ling Han was able to catch the little lazy pig in time, but when a perverted pig pounced over, he was disgusted to death. How could he possibly move to catch it? Pa, the little pink pig fell onto the ground and did not move at all. Little piggy, Huan Shui hurriedly called out. Don't worry, he won't die, Ling Han said with a smile. This guy could even withstand the force of his punch, so how could he possibly die from a mere fall? Yet this pig actually did not move in the slightest. Don't pretend to be pitiful. Hurry up and get up to do proper business. Ling Han nudged him with his foot. Who? He turned over, only to discover that the fat pig had already fallen asleep, snoring loudly. How could he fall asleep after a fall? Are you a fucking pig? It was indeed a pig. However, with Ling Han's interference, the little pink pig also woke up. It once again stared at Ling Han's neck, its eyes shining. What is it? Are you coveting my treasure? Ling Han asked smilingly, and even took off the purple pendant. He was also very curious about the origins of this thing. The little pink pig came over to take a look, and even smelt it with its nose. Then it made a gesture that drove Ling Han crazy. It began to spit at the purple pendant. Fuck! Ling Han hurriedly withdrew the pendant. Fat pig, believe it or not, I will beat you into a dead pig. The little pink pig instantly revealed an expression of disdain, looking like it was saying, Uncle Pig isn't afraid of you at all. It seemed that, in the eyes of this pig, the purple pendant could not be considered any kind of treasure. Thus, it merely looked at it curiously, and then began to spit in disdain. This pig was definitely strange. Huan Shui, wait here. I'll bring this fat pig up, Ling Han said. When the little pink pig heard this, it immediately spread out its limbs and clung onto Huan Shui's thigh. It was clear that it did not want to go with Ling Han. This was disdain. How could Ling Han possibly care? He forcefully grabbed the little pink pig. This lecherous pig was very durable, but its power was extremely weak. How could it be a match for Ling Han, causing it to release a terrible cry? Ling Han continued to walk up the mountain with the little pink pig. The purple pendant on his neck glowed, resisting the pressure on the mountain. Even so, the higher up the mountain, the more terrifying the pressure was. Soon, Ling Han also began to sweat. Ka. His joints released explosive cracking sounds. This should not be some kind of formation, but rather the aura left behind by an elite. There was no way to resolve it. If you yourself were strong, you would be able to match or ignore this kind of pressure. If you were not strong enough, you could only sprawl out on the ground in defeat. On the other hand, the little pink pig seemed to be completely fine, as if it was immune to this kind of pressure. This fat pig would occasionally glance at Ling Han, its eyes filled with mockery and disdain. One day, I'll cook you into a roast pig, Ling Han said. Goo. The little pink pig retorted sarcastically, though it only called out like this back and forth. I can't be bothered to deal with you. Ling Han carried the little pink pig and continued walking. The terrifying pressure became stronger and stronger, and his speed also became slower and slower. The popping sound of his joints sounded like broad beans were being stir-fried. Ling Han was surprised, because a flight of stairs had actually appeared in front of him. Furthermore, it was made of high-grade jade, exuding a gentle brilliance. There were no steps at the foot of the mountain. Instead, there were steps halfway up the mountain. No matter what, it made no sense. Ling Han raised his head and looked forward. Vaguely, he could see some blurry structures ahead of him, but could not see them clearly. Were those buildings left behind by the civilization of the last era? After the drastic change of heaven and earth, the ground had cracked open, causing a great many ancient structures to reappear. Thus, this mountain peak used to be underground, and it may be that it had just appeared. Otherwise, it should be very difficult for an old ginseng that was 500 to 600 years old to appear here. Ancient sites usually represented great fortune. Ling Han kept feeling that the present path of martial arts was only the beginning, and this judgment came from the alchemical pills. Even if he was the alchemy emperor and was incredibly sensitive about alchemy, he should not have been able to concoct a pill recipe just by looking at it and succeed in a single attempt at that. There was only one explanation for this, and that was the pill recipe was too low grade. That was why he could understand it with a single glance, and could also make modifications very quickly. And who would this alchemical pill be used by? Of course, it was the current martial artists, whether it was meridian opening tier martial artists, blood transformation tier martial artists, or extreme bone tier martial artists. Thus, Ling Han could deduce that the current level of cultivation was also very, very low. The lower the cultivation level of martial arts, the faster the rate of improvement. For example, Ling Han could use the rich man's formation to complete the cultivation of 1 meridian in half a day. At a higher cultivation level, this was unimaginable. Then, if he could discover a high-level ancient site from the civilization of the last era, he may be able to immediately become an elite above extreme bone tier. Most importantly, his spiritual power would be improved, allowing him to reunite with his family. His heart throbbed wildly, and he took a step, stepping onto the steps. Wang, a massive power rebounded back. Pong! Ling Han's whole person was instantly thrown backwards, landing solidly on the ground. Gurururu! The little pink pig was laughing so hard that it was rolling over, its 4 short legs kicking madly. It was practically demented in its laughter. I've decided. I'll eat roasted suckling pig now, Ling Han said fiercely. The little pink piggy wasn't afraid of him at all, and looked him in the eye. Ling Han chuckled and said, "Do you think that I can't do anything to you just because you can endure a beating?" The little pink pig showed a hint of confusion. Then what else can you do? Ling Han grabbed the little pink pig's short tail and lifted it upside down. Goo! The little pink pig immediately screamed in pain. Its head was upside down, and it was very easy for its brain to be filled with blood. Ling Han climbed the steps again, but he was still bounced back, and fell solidly with the pig. Forget it, he wouldn't go head-on. Ling Han avoided the flight of stairs and walked to the side. There was no path here. The mountain rocks were rugged, and added with the massive pressure, it was similarly not easy to walk. However, at least there was no power rebounding from beneath their feet, so they could still climb up. It was just that their speed would be slightly slower. Ling Han slowly walked up the mountain. After taking a few steps, he would stop to catch his breath. This pressure was really terrifying, but he had walked all the way here from the Genesis world, so what was a little bit of pressure worth? Even the little pink pig was moved. This human that it had initially looked down on actually had such toughness. Admittedly, one needed natural talent to break through to the pinnacle of martial arts, but in truth, tenacious willpower was even more important. There were many top-tier prodigies that had died on the path of breaking through. Most of the reason was because their resilience was not strong enough, and they had not been able to grit their teeth and survive. He seemed to have underestimated this ugly human. After spending half a day's time, Ling Han finally saw the structure ahead of him. He was surprised. This was indeed a group of buildings in the past, belonging to some force of the previous civilization, but now most of the structures had been damaged. In fact, corpses could even be seen on the ground. They had long since turned into bones, but the clothes they were wearing were still present, which was very strange. Now that he was here, the pressure was even greater. Ling Han really had no way to advance any further. He observed carefully, searching for the source of the pressure. Goo! The little pink pig suddenly pointed in a direction. Ling Han looked over, yet he didn't see anything. Pervert! What do you want me to see? Pa! The little pink pig slapped him, and Ling Han's eyes immediately became clear. He saw a deep sword mark in the distance. It was the terrifying murderous aura emitted by the sword mark that formed a pressure that enveloped the entire mountain. Hold on, why do I know that this is a mark left by a sword? A doubt flashed through Ling Han's mind. That was only a thick mark. Saber, spear, sword, and even the palm of his hand could leave behind this kind of mark, so why was he so sure that it was a sword mark? He looked towards the little pink pig. That scene was what the little pink pig had let him see, so it was very likely that this was also the little pink pig's own judgment. Perverted pig. How many secrets are you hiding? Ling Han picked up the little pink pig. Goo! The little pink pig didn't even look at him directly, but it immediately paid a price for it, and was thrown out by Ling Han. Ling Han looked up the mountain again, and murmured, I can't go up, but can I find something good in the surroundings? He could not enter into this massive group of buildings, and could only walk in a circle. Not long after, he discovered a broken sword that was very close to him. It was about 6 meters away, and was not on the path paved with jade either. Would he be able to succeed? He tried to walk forward, but after taking 2 steps, he felt a salty taste in his throat, and spluttered out a mouthful of blood. No, if he continued, that would only be courting death. Ling Han retreated, and the little pink pig glanced at him disdainfully, looking like it was waiting for him to beg for its help. Hey! Ling Han tried to pull the sword back with a twig or something, but it was useless. Anything that came close to that sword would immediately be shattered. Was there really nothing he could do? Could he only ask that perverted pig for help? Goo! The little pink pig was shamelessly high-spirited, looking like it was definitely going to make Ling Han submit. A thought flashed in Ling Han's mind, and he released his spiritual power. At his level, his spiritual power could only control the formation patterns, and in terms of power, he could only lift a few books at most. However, this should be enough to drag the sword back. Ling Han immediately released his spiritual power. This wasn't affected by the pressure, and it immediately wrapped around the hilt of the sword. Then it turned into a hand and pulled forcefully. Chong! The broken sword let out a sound, moving slightly in his direction. What was going on here? The little pink pig revealed an astounded expression. It looked towards Ling Han, and suddenly came to a realization. Spiritual power. This human actually cultivated spiritual power when he was only in the meridian opening tier? Humph, this was quite interesting. When Ling Han saw that it was possible, his confidence naturally soared. He once again hooked the broken sword with his spiritual power. Chong! The broken sword moved slightly towards him again. Chong, chong, chong. The broken sword could only move a few inches every time, but slowly and steadily, it was getting closer and closer to Ling Han. Half an hour later, it had already appeared at Ling Han's feet. Success! Whoosh! The little pink pig suddenly scrambled out, mouth wide open as it bit down on the broken handle. Soon after, it ran away. It ran a few steps before turning around, revealing a smile at Ling Han, as if to say, "Come and chase me." Ling Han was completely unconcerned. He simply folded his arms. The little pink pig was furious, and continued to run. However, after running a few steps, it began to pant and directly collapsed to the ground. He could no longer run. Ling Han walked over and easily snatched the broken sword from the little pink pig's mouth. "Lazy pig, you're really too weak." The little pink piglet was indescribably indignant, and grunted. Ling Han carefully examined this broken sword. There were many veined patterns on the blade, which were somewhat similar to the formation patterns he had learnt, but were far more complicated. Strictly speaking, it was more similar to that great formation of the ancient Tao sect. He had once dug out 3 formation foundations and studied them carefully. Could it still be used? Ling Han brandished the broken sword in an attempt to cut a stone, and a shocking scene appeared. This broken sword was incredibly sharp, and with a single slash, the stone was sliced apart like tofu. From this aspect alone, it could be called a precious treasure. A blood transformation tier's body has been tempered by mystical power, thereby resulting in a sturdy physique that can practically ignore even firearms. However, if one is struck by this sword, it's guaranteed that their bones will immediately break. Hold on. There's something like formation patterns on it? Can it be activated? If it's possible, then what should I do? I don't know whether these are formation patterns or something else. That's not right. In battle, the situation would change drastically at the drop of a hat, and a single moment's thought could decide life and death. What time would there be for someone to slowly activate the formation patterns? Ling Han's eyes lit up. Spiritual power. He once again extended his spiritual power, which surged into the sword's blade. However, the broken sword did not react at all. It's not that there's no reaction, but my spiritual power is too weak. I'll strengthen it a little more. Ling Han continuously strengthened his release of spiritual power, but right until he had almost completely poured out his spiritual power did a seal on the broken sword light up slightly. Whoosh! A visible flash of sword chi was shot out. It was green in color. Pong! 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 The sword chi swept by, and the rocks along the way shattered one after another. Only when the sword chi reached a range of 30 meters did it disappear on its own. Fuck! So powerful! Ling Han exclaimed in astonishment. Even if he now had thousands of kilograms of strength, the distance at which his power could be released was still only 9 meters, and had not increased. However, the sword chi that this broken sword shot out could reach as far as 30 meters, and its might was even more terrifying. He had picked up a treasure, he really had. Ling Han revealed a happy smile. He had only activated one seal, and there were still 4 complete seals on the broken sword. If they could all be activated, just how powerful would the broken sword be? The little pink pig revealed a disdainful expression. It was just a broken sword, so what was there to be proud of? The human looked as if he had obtained a treasure. Pervert, if you dare to spit at me in the future, I'll really kill you and prepare a feast. Ling Han brandished the broken sword. The little pink pig showed a disdainful expression, looking completely arrogant like it was a lord pig that didn't care at all. Fuck. Why was this pig's expression so despicable? Could it be that its defenses were so strong that even this broken sword could do nothing against it? Ling Han lightly swiped his sword across the little pink pig's body. As expected, the pig's skin seemed to be smooth and unaffected, and the broken sword didn't cause any damage. He activated his spiritual power again and unleashed sword chi. Plop. The little pink pig was flipped over a few times by sword chi, but it was still undamaged. This time, Ling Han was truly stunned. He was sure that the destructive power of the broken sword was at least on the level of the 5th change in blood transformation tier. In fact, it had even reached the extreme bone tier. Yet, it had not even managed to slice off a single hair of this perverted pig, which showed how astonishing this pig was. What breed are you? Ling Han picked up this pig, his face filled with curiosity. His defenses were astonishing, but his battle prowess was only trash. After running a few steps, he would be out of breath. All he knew was how to eat and act like a pervert. With so many unique traits added together, Ling Han could not imagine that there would be such an existence. The little pink pig spat at Ling Han. How dare this human hit this lord pig until like some kind of stuffed animal? This was really too despicable. Ling Han grabbed the little pink pig and headed downhill. If this perverted pig was allowed to enter into that group of buildings, he would probably be able to find even more treasures. But the problem was, with this guy's laziness, would it be willing to take anything out? Even if it was very diligent, just because of its present relationship with Ling Han, would this pig be willing to go? The answer was obviously negative. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry either. It was easy to get swept off by excitement in the beginning, but there were countless ancient sites from the last civilization. There would be plenty of opportunities in the future. To say nothing else, he already knew that the Jade Dragon bone mine of the ancient Tao sect had a historical site of the last era in its depths. It was difficult to ascend the mountain, but it was easy to descend the mountain. Very soon, he met his little handmaiden, and the two of them continued to descend the mountain, returning to Huju City. The perverted pig also followed. It was nestling in Huan Shue's arms, unwilling to leave no matter what. Alright, this pig may be useful. After entering into the city, that fat pig's eyes immediately lit up. There were young women everywhere of all sorts, making this pig seem as if it had been pumped full of adrenaline, as it continuously let out pig snorts. This was utterly embarrassing. Miss Huan Shui. Not long after they entered the city, a group of 5 young men and women caught up to them. It was the group of 5 that Huan Shui had saved from the Great Green Mountains. Huan Shui hugged the little pink pig, looking very careful and vigilant. These 5 people were so terrifying. They actually wanted her to leave young master. Goo! The little pink pig set its eyes on the 2 young girls, and while Huan Shui wasn't paying attention, It escaped from prison and pounced at one of the young girls. However, it had obviously forgotten how little explosive power its 4 short legs had. It had only pounced halfway when its figure slid down and fell harshly onto the ground. Wah! Such a cute piglet. When the 2 young girls saw it, their eyes immediately lit up. It had to be admitted that the appearance of this little pink pig was indeed very deceptive. Ling Han grabbed that lecherous pig back and asked, "Why is it the 5 of you again?" "Humph, we're going to save Miss Huan Shui," the 5 of them said at the same time, looking like envoys of justice. "Why don't you go back home and play in the mud?" Ling Han took the lead and left. "Don't even think of leaving." The 5 of them hurriedly surrounded him. Ling Han gave a light push, and with the release of his power, the 5 of them instantly fell to the ground. But they were not injured. He strode forward, and Huan Shui hurriedly followed behind him. She too wanted to stay further away from these 5 people. "What do we do?" a youth asked. "Follow them first, see where they live, and then call for reinforcements," the older youth said. "All right." The 5 of them followed sneakily behind Ling Han and Huan Shui. Soon they arrived at the Alchemist Society. Why is it here? Could it be that that despicable guy is an alchemist? Even so, we can't let Miss Huan Shui fall into his evil grasp. Come, let's go back and get reinforcements. Ling Han returned to his residence and carefully put away the 9 flames grass and yellow ginseng. This could only be used in the future. Now, he naturally had to store them well to avoid the loss of the medicinal effects. After Huan Shui got that perverted pig, she was very happy. Ling Han couldn't be bothered to care either. He began to cultivate in seclusion, preparing to break through to the blood transformation tier. He naturally knew that crossing over a major tier was definitely not something that could be done in a short period of time. Still, he couldn't waste time, right? There were still 5 days until the deadline that the old man had said. What major event would happen 5 days later? He would just have to wait and see. Ling Han had a lot of confidence now. Firstly, his battle prowess was already comparable to the blood transformation tier's 3rd change. Secondly, he also had the broken sword which could actually match an extreme bone tier's attack with its sword chi upon activation. He went into seclusion, searching for an opportunity to break through. For a madman of martial arts like him, he naturally would not waste a single second. Blood transformation tier was a qualitative leap compared to meridian opening, but it was also extremely difficult to break through. The greatest characteristic of first change was transforming the blood in one's body into purple blood. However, this was only a byproduct of the change. What had truly changed was the essence of life. Because the essence had changed drastically, it had also caused a change in the blood. But how was he supposed to attain the qualitative change of blood transformation tier? No one could explain clearly. This could only be comprehended by oneself. For things like exploring meridians, it was impossible that anyone could give you any guidance either, explaining how you should do it. You could only rely on yourself. Ling Han naturally had confidence in himself. There were so many blood transformation tier warriors in this world. Besides, he had even opened up 100 meridians. How could it be that he would still be unable to break through to blood transformation tier? The problem was, how much time did he need? 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time slowly crept by. However, Ling Han didn't receive any inspiration or enlightenment. He remained at the level of 20 meridians. Of course, his 20 meridians was completely different from other 20 meridians. He had opened up too many small branches, so it wouldn't be strange for him to be called 100 meridians. Ling Han came out of seclusion. There were still 2 days until that big day. He could no longer continue his seclusion. He wanted to get some food, but he couldn't find Huan Shui anywhere, which was strange to him. Where had that little girl gone? When he still hadn't seen Huan Shui at night, Ling Han finally felt that something was off. He asked around, and apparently Huan Shui left with a fat pig in the morning. She had left in the morning and had not returned yet? What had happened? Ling Han mobilized the members of the Alchemist Society to search for Huan Shui. Though the Alchemist Society were all alchemists by profession, every one of them had a very wide network. Could not be helped. Everyone liked alchemical pills, and the status of alchemists was naturally very out of the ordinary. There were a great many bootlickers. Soon, the whereabouts of Huan Shui throughout the day were investigated one by one. In the morning, she first went to the bun shop and ate 9 baskets. And it must have been ordered by that fat pig. The little handmaiden did not have such a big appetite. Then they went shopping. At noon, they went to 4 C's star restaurant and ordered 18 dishes. Oh little pig, how could you eat so much? In the afternoon, they continued shopping, but when it was around 3 o'clock, Huan Shui and the pig suddenly disappeared. Suddenly disappeared? Ling Han immediately moved, arriving at the location where Huan Shui had been reported to have disappeared. This was a small alley. Ling Han took out the jade-colored toad, and immediately, the toad croaked towards the northwest. Ling Han leaped up and headed in that direction. After walking for a while, he took out the toad to calibrate the direction. Just like that, half an hour later, he stopped in front of a mansion. Huan Shui was inside. Ling Han didn't think that this was just any building that lay in front of him, and Huan Shui was further down the course. That was because the words Hu Manor were written on the plaque of this mansion. It was Hu Qiu. Under Zhong Yangbi's guidance, this guy discovered Huan Shui's natural talent in alchemy and immediately wanted to turn Huan Shui into his 8th concubine. However, due to the power of Mercy Medicine Hall, he didn't dare to act recklessly. And now, was he finally unable to hold back his claws? Ling Han walked towards the main doors. When he was close enough, the 2 guards at the doors looked towards him at the same time and shouted, "Halt! Ling Han!" A guard recognized him. This was the newly promoted champion of the martial arts tournament, an existence that had defeated Tuoba Tianhuang. "So it's Captain Ling." The other guard raised his clasped hands in Ling Han's direction. "We are honored by your presence. What brings you here?" Though Ling Han's natural talent in martial arts was freakish, his status was not high, mainly because the news that he had become a high-level alchemist had yet to spread. Thus, these 2 people could only address him as Ling Han's position in the Shenqing banner. In front of the Hu clan, to say nothing of being a Shenqing banner's deputy captain, even a captain wasn't a big deal, unless it was Lian Shuerong who was here. Ling Han said calmly, "I'm here to find someone, and it should be 2 people. If I may ask, Captain Ling, who are you looking for?" The first guard asked. "My maid, Huan Shui, and your young master Hu Qiu," Ling Han said. "Looking for young master Hu Qiu?" The first guard shook his head and said with a smile, "How could Captain Ling's maid be in our residence? As for the 9th young master, he is going to take a concubine today and should not have the time to see Captain Ling." "Take a concubine?" As expected. "How audacious." Ling Han set off, heading towards the Hu Manor. "Stop right there," the first guard called out. Seeing that Ling Han had no intention of stopping, he looked towards the other person. The 2 of them drew back their hands at the same time and delivered a palm strike at Ling Han with their sheathed sabers. Ling Han casually parried, and pong pong. The 2 guards immediately lay face up on the ground, groaning and moaning, unable to get up. Of course, this was because he had held back. Otherwise, he would have been able to turn the 2 of them into mincemeat with a single strike. Stop right there," the 2 guards moaned. This was the only thing they could do now. Ling Han strode forwards. This Hu Qiu was really outrageously bold, daring to even touch his little female attendant. Why are you here?" As they were walking, they saw a young man suddenly walk towards them, an expression of surprise on his face. Ling Han was also slightly surprised, because this young man was one of the 5 people who was determined to save Huan Shui. He was a member of the Hu clan? "Why can't I be here?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Miss Huan Shui isn't here. Hurry up and leave." The young man waved his hand repeatedly. Wasn't this akin to confessing to his own sins? Was Huan Shui's disappearance related to him? "Is that right?" Ling Han asked casually, but continued to walk forwards. Hey, what are you doing?" The young man stopped him. Ling Han merely gave a light push with his hand, and the youth was pushed to the side. The power gap was too wide. He continued to walk forward, his speed extremely fast. You want to marry my little female attendant? Have you gotten my agreement? Hey! 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 The youth continued his pursuit. His determination was quite strong. However, though he had ran as fast as he could not catch up to Ling Han no matter what. He could only shout in vain from behind. It wasn't long before the guards of the Hu residence appeared before them. Stop him! Stop him! The youth hurriedly shouted. Halt! The servant hurriedly moved to block Ling Han. Ling Han made a grabbing motion with his hand, and the servant couldn't resist at all as he was sent flying. Shua, that servant crashed over and just happened to hit that young man. Pung, the two of them instantly fell into a heap. The youth hurriedly struggled to his feet and continued to chase after Ling Han. However, after chasing for a few steps, he saw that Ling Han had already entered the main hall. Elegant music played and there were some guests in the hall. However, there weren't many people and there were no musicians either. Instead, it was played by the optical computer, and through the sound system it spread throughout the entire hall. The music was loud, so Ling Han didn't attract anyone's attention when he entered. Ling Han walked around casually. The wedding hadn't begun yet, and he didn't see any groom or bride. Oi! Oi! That youth had also followed him in. When he called out, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. Little 17th? Quite a number of people looked surprised. This young man's name was Hu Bin, and he was the 17th oldest among the younger generation of the Hu clan. Thus, the seniors of the Hu clan all called him Little 17th. What's wrong? Today is your 9th brother's big day. Why are you making such a big fuss? Ling Han. Hu Bin's eyes soon found Ling Han and pointed at him. Instantly, everyone's eyes were focused on Ling Han. Sigh, it really is him. What is the deputy captain of the Shenqing banner doing here at our Hu clan? Who let him in? Why didn't anyone announce him? A middle-aged man walked over and asked Ling Han, Captain Ling, what can I do for you? He was still quite polite and did not directly reprimand Ling Han for barging into the Hu residence. This could be considered as giving Lien Shuerong some face. Ling Han gave an "oh" and said, I have come to find my little female attendant. Your maidservant? The middle-aged man's expression was filled with curiosity. His name was Hu Chang and he was a 12 meridians. He found it strange that Ling Han's maidservant would come to their Hu clan. He smiled. Deputy Captain Ling, you must have made a mistake. This is the Hu residence. So why would your maid come here? There's no mistake. She's right here. Ling Han nodded. Hu Cheng's expression turned cold, and he said, Captain Ling, you've gone too far. Hand her over and hand over the culprit, and I will leave immediately. Ling Han said calmly. Whether it was Hu Chang or anyone else, every member of the Hu clan was almost angered to death. Fuck, you have come to the Hu clan and still dare to threaten us? Ling Han, you've gone too far. Hu Chang said darkly. Have I gone too far? Ling Han chuckled. You guys kidnapped my maid, and I came to find her, and you actually say that I have gone too far? Stop spouting nonsense. Hu Chang shouted coldly. Ling Han sat down on the chair and said, All right, then let's wait and see. The Hu clan does not welcome you, Hu Chang shouted. He had initially wanted to make a move, but he recalled that Ling Han was the champion of the martial arts tournament, and even Tuoba Tianhuang was no match for him, what more him. If he made a move, he would only be seeking his own humiliation. Come. He wanted to call out for security, but when he thought about it, the guards in the residence were all Meridian opening tier elites. If they attacked together, would they still be a match for Ling Han? Thus, if he wanted to suppress Ling Han, he could only ask the elites of the clan to move. The problem here was for a junior to take a concubine, and furthermore it was his 8th concubine. What need was there for a blood transformation tier elite to attend? Then what could they do? How could it be that they would allow this brat to behave atrociously here? No, then what face would the Hu clan have? Xiao Su, go and get third uncle. He hurriedly called a young man over and whispered into his ear. Yes. That person immediately nodded and left. The third uncle that Hu Chang spoke of was a veteran elite of the Hu clan. His name was Hu Chaoxing, and he was an elite of the blood transformation tier. This was naturally enough to suppress Ling Han. "Let's see how long you can continue to be smug," Hu Cheng said coldly in his heart. Ling Han sat upright. On the surface, he appeared very calm, but killing intent was already intertwined in his heart. At first, he had thought that after dealing with Zhong Yangbi, Hu Qiu would behave himself. He had not thought that this guy would still dare to mess around. And he had not chosen a good surname. A short while later, Hu Chaoxing came. There was an obvious look of displeasure on his face. Someone actually came to the Hu clan to cause trouble. This made him very angry, and what made him even angrier was the fact that the clan members actually could not deal with this intruder, and even needed him to make a move. What trash! He arrived at the main hall and saw Ling Han with a single glance. Ling Han was presently sitting in an armchair, sipping tea leisurely. "So you are Ling Han?" he asked Ling Han. Ling Han glanced at him and said, "Enough with the nonsense. Give me back my maid. You have come to our Hu clan, and still dare to boast shamelessly?" Hu Chaoxing's eyes were cold. "Humph! I shall capture you first." He moved, grabbing out at Ling Han. A mere meridian opening tier cultivator was nothing but trash in front of a blood transformation tier cultivator, even if he had opened a few of the legendary hidden meridians. This was the case even if he was only at the first change. "Third Elder has moved. This time, that madman is definitely going to die. Humph! Who asked him to actually dare come to our Hu clan?" When everyone saw Hu Chaoxing move, they all looked proud. Ling Han shook his head. He didn't stand up and simply threw a punch. Pong! Their fist and palm had not even come into contact, and the force that they had released had already clashed. Then, like a scarecrow, Hu Chaoxing was sent flying with a swoosh. He landed on the ground. Pong! A chair was smashed into pieces, and he slid for a long distance before finally coming to a stop. At this moment, everyone was gaping in shock. What had they seen? Am I seeing things? Someone please tell me that the one sent flying wasn't Third Elder but that bastard Ling Han. It seems like the one who was sent flying is really our Third Elder. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Everyone could not believe it. Their Third Elder that was like a god in their eyes had actually been defeated by Ling Han. Furthermore, he had been defeated in a single move. This drove them crazy, and their worldview crumbled. Ling Han said calmly, "I'm still very polite now. As long as you return my maidservant and hand over the culprit, I'll take them away. Otherwise, heh." The members of the Hu clan were all furious. "You have come to the Hu clan to cause trouble, and actually still dare to say such words? Go and invite Second Elder. There's also Grand Elder. Also, go to the Xianxia banner to find Lian Shuerong. I want to ask her how she teaches her subordinates." Immediately, someone rushed out of the main hall and went to seek out the Second Elder and the Grand Elder of the Hu clan, as well as Lian Shuerong. Ling Han was completely unconcerned. He was in the right in today's matter. Even if the city lord was invited, he was not afraid. "If you want to play, I'll oblige. Groom and bride e." The person in the back hall did not know that something had happened ahead of them, and was guiding the groom and bride out. When he saw the chaotic situation in the main hall, he was immediately dumbfounded. Ling Han looked at the young man in the bright red wedding attire and asked, "So you are Hu Qiu?" Ling Han. Hu Qiu's eyes involuntarily narrowed. Ling Han was too famous now. Half of the people in Huju City had witnessed the battle with their own eyes. Who didn't know the freakish man who had defeated Tuoba Tianhuang? And in Hu Qiu's case, he also knew Ling Han's other identity, Huan Shui's master. He couldn't understand why a beautiful cultivator, and one that was likely to become an alchemist or formation master at that, would be willing to be a servant. No matter where she was, Huan Shui could become the center of attention. Why should she become Ling Han's slave? However, to Hu Qiu, Ling Han was only a vice-captain of the Xianxia banner who could fight well. Compared to the Hu clan, he was far, far inferior. Thus, he had always wanted to make a move on Huan Shui. But because of Mercy Medicine Hall, he did not dare to take her by force. Unexpectedly, Little 19 gave him a surprise and asked him to rescue Huan Shui out of the fire pit. Most importantly, she really had left Mercy Medicine Hall. He ran over to take a look and saw that Huan Shui was walking the dog. No, the pig. He immediately snatched her back and prepared to get married that night, making Huan Shui his 8th concubine. Once what was done, he would just have to compensate Ling Han with some money at most. The Hu clan was not short of money. However, what he did not expect was that Ling Han had actually come to the Hu residence. He had a guilty conscience and didn't have any domineering bearing left. He couldn't help but take a few steps back. Woo 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 woo, woo woo woo. The bride struggled excitedly, but it was obvious at a glance that her hands and feet were definitely tied. Even when she walked, she could only take small steps. Her head was also covered with a red veil, so her appearance could not be seen. It was definitely Huan Shui. Although she couldn't see Ling Han, hearing Hu Qiu's words, she naturally knew that young master had come to save her. This made her extremely excited. Ling Han pointed at the bride and said, "Lift up her veil. The wedding hasn't even started. How can we remove the veil?" An elder said. He was an elder of the Hu clan, but his cultivation level had always been stuck at the peak of meridian opening, unable to advance into the blood transformation tier and become the 4th elder of the Hu clan. However, his attitude was very unyielding. This was the Hu clan. No one could be arrogant and reckless. Ling Han shook his head and said, "Then I will do it for you. Don't you dare." Hu Qiu hurriedly said, "If someone else lifted the bride's veil, would he still have the face to survive in the future?" Ling Han strode over and said, "You stole my maid and forced her to marry you, and you still dare to be arrogant?" He stretched out a hand, and a terrifying force shook. Pong, 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 the people in front of him instantly fell to the ground. Hu Qiuxing had already climbed to his feet. With a loud roar, he charged towards Ling Han. Boom! Purple blood and qi rose from his entire body, making him seem like a great demon. His blood and qi boiled. This guy was going all out, using the unique ability of the blood transformation tier. As his blood and qi boiled, his strength increased explosively by 2 to 3 times, and both his eyes turned purple, looking incomparably fierce. Ling Han did not dare to be careless. After boiling his blood and qi, Hu Qiuxing's strength was about 500,000 kilograms. He definitely could not be underestimated. He also channeled all the mystical power in his body. The small meridians connected all the big meridians as if he only had one meridian in his body. Punch! Bang! When their fists collided, both of their strengths exceeded the speed of sound. Under the superposition of the sound waves, the force of their blows became visible to the naked eye as they fiercely collided. Ling Han's power transformed into a huge fist. The power of the fist was extremely solid, and could be seen with the naked eye. Hu Qiuxing's power paused for a moment, and then shattered. However, Ling Han's fist only had a few more cracks, and continued to crush towards Hu Qiuxing. "What?" Hu Qiuxing exclaimed, his expression turning extremely ugly. Bang! He crossed his arms in front of his chest. Under the violent force, his figure was forced back, shoveling and crushing the tiles on the floor of the hall until he stopped at the foundations of the hall. Because he had hit the wall. Bang! The entire hall shook. Everyone's expressions were the same as Hu Qiuxing's, filled with disbelief. Third Elder's blood and qi was already boiling, and he had unleashed his strength to the extreme. Yet he was still no match for Ling Han? Was this guy really in the meridian opening tier? In terms of shock, no one could compare to Hu Qiuxing, because only he knew how powerful that attack was. 450,000 kilograms. However, he was still forced back by Ling Han's punch, which meant that the latter's strength definitely exceeded 500,000 kilograms. Normally speaking, the average power of a third change cultivator was only 500,000 kilograms. A meridian opening tier cultivator was actually comparable to a third change? Then if this guy advanced into the blood transformation tier, just how terrifying would his power reach? Ling Han walked past Hu Qiu, who was trembling all over, but did not dare to stop him at all. He could only watch helplessly as Ling Han lifted the bride's veil, revealing a pretty face. Who else could it be but Huan Shui? However, the little handmaiden's mouth was now gagged. No wonder she didn't make a sound just now. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked extremely excited. Young master had come to save her. Ling Han turned Huan Shui around, and saw that the little maid's hands were tied behind her back. This was a silver chain, and it was unknown what material it was made of. He pulled hard and realized that he could not break the chain. It was really sturdy. Ling Han undid the chain, and then the little handmaiden pulled out the cloth that was stuffed in her mouth. With a face full of grievance and apology, she said, "Huan Shui is too useless. I still need young master to save me. This girl." Ling Han chuckled and said, "This isn't Huan Shui's fault. It is just that some people are too detestable." Yes, yes, yes. Huan Shui nodded continuously. This person was too despicable. He actually wanted to forcefully marry her. She didn't like him. "And little piggy," she sobbed. "They snatched him up and said they were going to make him into a roast suckling pig." She looked at Wuxia and said, "Give me back my piggy." Ling Han sighed. Just now, his aura was overflowing. But now that the little handmaiden had interrupted, the entire atmosphere had changed. "Don't worry about that fat pig. It won't die," he said calmly. That lecherous pig had thick skin and flesh. Even he couldn't cut it open with the broken sword. Who could hurt it here? At this moment, that lecherous pig was probably throwing itself into the arms of some girl and acting cute. Ling Han looked at Wuxia and calmly asked, "What else do you have to say?" This person had been caught red-handed. What else could he say? Wuxia snorted and said, "Don't forget, this is the Hu clan." Just like how he did not dare to barge into the Mercy Medicine Hall back then, how could Ling Han possibly barge into the Hu clan? Although the strongest person in the Hu clan was only at the 4th change, he was still slightly more impressive than Mo Guahao. After all, alchemists were subordinate to cultivators. If you trespass into the Hu clan, no one will be able to save you. Oh, you still don't have the slightest intention of repenting even at this time? Ling Han shook his head. Then someone like you deserves to die. Humph! You dare to barge into my Hu clan and threaten to kill? A cold voice rang out, and a tall old man walked out from the inner hall. He walked in a majestic manner, and his chi and blood was astonishing. "Greetings, second elder." Instantly, all the members of the Hu clan knelt on the ground. This was the second elder of the Hu clan, Hu Ronghai. He was also a blood transformation tier elite and had surpassed the 1st change. He was a 2nd change. "Second brother, don't be careless. This kid is very strange. His power is at least 500,000 kilograms, Hu Chaoxing warned. Hu Ronghai couldn't help but be stunned. A meridian opening tier cultivator with a strength of 500,000 kilograms? What kind of joke was this? The limit of the meridian opening tier was 50,000 kilograms. There were indeed freakish people who could break through the limit, but it was only 55,000 to 60,000 kilograms, which was already extremely impressive. 500,000 kilograms of strength? How was that possible? Could it be that after opening a few hidden meridians, one's power would obtain such a terrifying increase? Fuck! Didn't that mean that there was no difference between unblocking the hidden meridians and advancing into the blood transformation tier? He naturally did not know that Ling Han had also opened up all the meridians in his body and connected all the major meridians together. Otherwise, the limit of 20 meridians was only 300,000 kilograms in strength. Furthermore, this was measured by Ling Han's standards. The breadth of his meridians, the speed at which his mystical power surged, and the purity far exceeded that of others. Thus, for another person who had opened 20 meridians, the limit might be 150,000 kilograms, or perhaps 250,000 kilograms. However, would third brother spout nonsense on such a matter? A meridian opening tier cultivator can defeat a blood transformation tier cultivator. Vice Captain Ling, I've really underestimated you, Hu Ronghai said calmly. If his third brother hadn't lost his mind, then other than the fact that this young man's cultivation level was inferior to his own, he was completely capable of standing on equal footing with him, or even in fact surpass him. However, don't forget that this is the Hu clan. His tone suddenly became stern. Ling Han, Did you hear that? This is the Hu clan, with 2 blood transformation tier elites holding the fort. Wuxia's arrogance finally rose. Just continue being arrogant. Continue acting fierce. Haha. Why don't you dare continue now? So what if I snatch your maid? You're just the vice captain of the Xianxia banner. Even if I sleep with your mother, your elder sister, and your younger sister, what can you do to me? His face was filled with insufferable arrogance. This was a typical second-generation young master that was pampered by an aristocratic family. Ling Han shook his head and beckoned to Hu Ronghai. Come. What did this mean? Of course, Hu Ronghai could not go over. What face would he have then? He placed his hands behind his back and said calmly, Now, kneel down and beg for mercy. I can consider letting you off lightly. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh and said, You guys raised an animal. Yet instead of properly disciplining it, you actually want me to kneel down and beg for mercy. Heh. What a powerful Hu clan. How dare you? The members of the Hu clan shouted angrily. You, an outsider, came to the Hu residence to make a fuss about the wedding, and you actually dare to teach us a lesson? If you don't come over, then I'll go over. Ling Han let out a long cry, and with a sudden leap, charged towards Hu Ronghai. He punched out. Boom, a terrifying power shook. Brat, the power of the blood transformation tier isn't just the boiling of blood and qi. Hu Ronghai said coldly. Wang, the blood and qi in his body rose, pitch black like ink, turning into a pillar. Second change blood transformation tier, condensed blood pillar. Instantly, a terrifying pressure pressed down on Ling Han. This was not in terms of power, but a suppression on the spiritual level. Wang, this pressure surged towards him, yet did not have the slightest bit of effect. What? Hu Ronghai mouthed these words, but it was already too late for him to make a sound, because Ling Han's punch had already arrived. Why was this kid immune to his murderous aura? He didn't have time to think about it and hurriedly blocked. Bang! With just one punch, he was sent flying. He was in a much worse state than Hu Chaoxing. Both his arms were broken and fell weakly. The entire place was deathly silent. Why was it that even Second Elder was no match for a single punch from Ling Han? Wuxia's entire body was trembling. He had just said a bunch of extremely insulting words to Ling Han, but in the blink of an eye, his Second Elder had collapsed. He felt like he was about to pee his pants. Hu Ronghai was definitely the most wronged person here. He had never thought that his murderous aura would actually be completely ineffective against Ling Han. If there was no effect, then so be it. Both sides exchanged blows. Yes, this brat had unleashed 10 overlapping layers of power, which was one layer more than his, and was indeed more impressive than him. However, how tough were the bones of blood transformation tier elites? How could this possibly shatter his bones? Shattered, not broken. He could feel that the bones in both of his arms were shattered, and they were drooping weakly like they were made of dough. Could he recover from such a shattered fracture? He felt too wronged. If he were to directly boil his blood and attack, then with his 400,000 kilograms of raw power, if he were to double it, he would definitely surpass Ling Han. But now, his arms were already crippled, and he was not good at using his legs. His strength could be said to be mostly crippled. That's right, this kid must have cultivated spiritual power. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to be immune to his murderous aura. His mind would definitely be shaken. Damn it, how could there be such a freak? Not only was his martial strength heaven-defying, but he had also cultivated spiritual power. How are you going to let others live with their inferiority? Ling Han was also surprised. This punch of his should only be able to defeat his opponent, so why did he cause such terrifying destructive power? And wasn't this very similar to the attack he used to kill Zhadiuan? He recalled the process of throwing this punch. It seemed to be no different from normal. Why did it have such an effect? After thinking for a while, his heart suddenly shook. Could it be? I'll get someone to verify it. Everyone, I'm sorry. I was thinking about something. So I was a little distracted. He smiled at everyone. Everyone could not help but complain in their hearts. Why didn't you think so hard that you went berserk and just simply died then? This was blatant mockery. Ling Han looked at Hu Qiu and calmly said, "Repeat what you said just now." Hu Qiu's entire body trembled. How would he dare? Was he courting death? "Speak." Ling Han raised his voice. Hu Qiu's body trembled, and he hurriedly said, "The Hu clan are bastards. Every single one of them is a beast. The older ones are old beasts, and the younger ones are little beasts." Instantly, the expressions of the Hu clansmen changed. They wished they could kill Hu Qiu. "You're too spineless. You're so cowardly just because you were frightened by someone. You're not worthy of being a member of the Hu clan. Do you deserve to die?" Ling Han interrupted Hu Qiu. Even he found it unbearable to hear. How could there be such a shameless person? I deserve to die." Hu Qiu hurriedly nodded. If he had known that Ling Han was so powerful, he would never have set his eyes on Huan Shui even if he was beaten to death. "Then you can go and die." Ling Han nodded. "Ah!" Hu Qiu's jaw dropped. The script shouldn't be like this. I've already begged for mercy so hard, and I've even in fact scolded my own family members. Why aren't you letting me live? If there's a next life, be a good person," Ling Han said calmly. Then he threw a punch. Pong! Hu Qiu's entire body instantly spurted out a cloud of blood, and he was deader than dead. What was even stranger was that Hu Qiu's chest, which was the point of impact, had completely collapsed. It was not the kind where his bones were broken, but as if there were no bones at all. Sure enough, Ling Han nodded. Murder! The hall was silent. Although Hu Qiu's actions just now had been unbearable, and he had betrayed them under Ling Han's threat, scolding the entire Hu clan, these were two separate matters. He was ultimately still a descendant of the Hu clan, but now he had been killed by an outsider in the clan's territory. Who wouldn't be worried? Home should be the safest harbor. But now? Also, this damn guy could have killed Hu Qiu with a casual punch, but he used the overlapping layers of power and turned Hu Qiu into minced meat. Was he deliberately showing off to them? This was too despicable. This was the Hu clan of Huju City, one of the 6 major clans. No one spoke, and Ling Han's eyes were also slightly closed, his brain rapidly channeling. His punch just now had directly shattered Hu Qiu's bones and internal organs. An ordinary punch wouldn't have such an effect even if it was superimposed with 20 overlapping layers of power. Unless one's power was several times greater than what it was now, one would not be able to achieve such an effect. Why did he have to use so much strength and overlapping layers of power to kill a mere Hu Qiu? This was what he wanted to verify. How could such a strike possess such terrifying power? That was because the waves of power formed a certain frequency, causing the destructive power to reach the limit. Why did this happen? Ling Han thought of a very simple analogy, and that was the swing. If it was pushed randomly, the swing would keep swaying, but it wouldn't flip over. However, if one found a frequency to push it, the swing might flip over. In fact, the strength used wouldn't have to be very great. Moreover, a bridge was sturdy and could withstand a lot of weight. Even if rows of cars drove across the bridge, it would not be a problem. However, if hundreds of people walked on the bridge at a fixed pace, the bridge might collapse. Ling Han hadn't used his full strength in that attack just now. Even if he had used 10 overlapping layers of power, logically speaking, it should have only broken Hu Qiu's bones at most. However, because he had grasped the fixed frequency, Hu Qiu's bones were shattered. With this frequency, I can fight an opponent that is stronger than me. However, there must be a limit. The key is where the limit is. Ling Han had been thinking about this question ever since he returned from the Thousand Lotus Mountains. Now he finally understood. Good. Hu Ronghai stared at Ling Han. From this moment on, the Hu clan will not rest until you die. Even if a heavenly king comes, he won't be able to save you. Ling Han chuckled and said, You're not a heavenly king, so how would you know that you can't save me? Besides, is the Hu clan that strong? Young man, you're too arrogant, Hu Ronghai said balefully. Ling Han looked at him and shook his head. You seem to have forgotten how your arms were broken? These words struck Hu Ronghai's sore spot. The most injustice he had suffered was being crippled by Ling Han before he could even display his strongest abilities. This made him want to vomit blood just thinking about it. "You're destined to bleed here today," he said fiercely. "Oh, if you want to kill my soldier, why don't you ask if Lien Shuerong has agreed to it?" A cold but pleasant voice sounded. Lien Shuerong walked in from outside. She was still wearing black leather clothes, completely outlining her impressive figure. Many people swallowed their saliva when they saw her. In Huju City, there were many people who had designs on this sexy rose. However, Lien Shuerong was not only a third change blood transformation tier cultivator, but also the banner lord of the Xianxia banner. Who would dare to compel a general of the majestic empire? Wouldn't they be afraid of being beheaded? "So it's Banner Lord Lien. Excuse me for not coming out to welcome you." Hu Ronghai smiled insincerely. He originally wanted to raise his hands in greeting, but he realized that his arms were broken. The expression on his face naturally became even more ferocious. "You came at the right time," he nodded. "This soldier of yours barged into my Hu clan and killed someone in public. Banner Lord Lien, please apprehend him and hand him over to our Hu clan to be dealt with." Banner Lord Lien is the leader of the Xianxia banner. Isn't the Xianxia banner meant to protect law-abiding citizens like us? A Hu clan member said sarcastically. "Banner Lord Lien, please take down this murderer." "Banner Lord Lien, please make your move," the Hu clan members said one after another. "No, no," Huan Shui quickly defended. "They kidnapped me here. Young Master barged in to save me. It really has nothing to do with Young Master." Meanwhile, Ling Han smiled and said, "That's what happened. My maidservant was kidnapped, and after my investigation, I discovered that it was done by the Hu clan. In order to prevent the Hu clan from sneaking her away, I didn't report to the Banner Lord and directly took action." "Nonsense. What kind of existence is my Hu clan? Why would we do such a thing as abducting people?" Hu Ronghai snorted. "Little Ninth just took a fancy to his maidservant and bought her from him. However, this evil brat actually went back on his word. He came here to cause trouble on his wedding day and openly killed. Banner Lord Lien, let me ask you, how should we deal with such an evil act?" TSK, TSK, TSK. He was really good at blaming others. He forcefully made a matter that was originally unreasonable sound reasonable and forcefully made the perpetrator sound like a victim. Ling Han felt that he himself was still far from being shameless. Yes, there was still a lot of room for improvement. Lien Shuerong said indifferently, "All right, I'll bring him back with me. After investigating the truth, I'll naturally give the Hu clan an explanation." These words clearly meant that she would be covering for Ling Han. "Banner Lord Lien, don't you think it's too much?" Hu Ronghai said balefully. "Can't you see that my little Ninth's corpse is still lying on the ground?" Lien Shuerong glared at him. "I'm going to leave with my people now. Do you dare to stop me?" Hu Ronghai was at a loss for words. Who didn't know that Lien Shuerong had a fiery temper and was extremely protective? She really dared to act recklessly. If it had been another time, he would not have been afraid to fight even if he was a minor cultivation level weaker. However, now that his arms were crippled, how could he possibly withstand a third change elite? "Hee hee. Banner Lord Lien is so impressive." Another voice sounded. A white-haired old man walked into the hall. Although he looked extremely old, the blood and qi in his body was at its peak. It was as if there was a ferocious creature hidden in his body that wanted to jump out and hurt people. "Greetings, Grand Elder." In an instant, all the members of the Hu clan knelt on the ground, their confidence skyrocketing. This was the Hu clan's Grand Elder who can a fourth change blood transformation elite. He single-handedly founded the Hu clan and brought the Hu clan to the position of one of the 6 major clans in Huju City. He was the spiritual pillar of the Hu clan. Hukan waved his hand and said, "Get up." The Hu clan members stood up one after another, all of them regaining their previous arrogance. Grand Elder had already appeared. What other problems would there be? Lien Shuerong's willowy brows furrowed slightly. Huken was a 4th change elite, and his cultivation level was even higher than hers. If they really fought, the possibility of her losing was even higher. However, with her protective personality, how could she back down? Clan leader who? She greeted him. Little girl, just leave. Hukan waved his hand. Although he also wanted to detain Lien Shuerong, he had to consider her identity as the banner lord of the Xianxia banner. This was a symbol of the Dark North nation's imperial power. To dare to attack a general of the imperial court was no different from treason. Lien Shuerong nodded and said, "All right, as long as clan leader who hands these two over to me, I will leave immediately." Ha ha ha. Hukan laughed loudly, but his expression was extremely cold. He stopped laughing and said coldly, "Banner Lord Lien, your request is too much. Looks like I can only take you down first." Hukan was very decisive. Once he decided to attack, he pounced without any hesitation. Hong! His blood and chi surged into the sky, turning into a crystal-colored human figure. What? Lien Shuerong turned pale with fright. This was condensed blood figure. Fourth change, condensed blood weapon. Fifth change, condensed blood figure. Hukan was not a fourth change, but a fifth change. This was bad. Lien Shuerong's blood and chi boiled, instantly increasing her power by 3 times. When blood transformation tier cultivators erupted, they could increase their power by 2 to 3 times. As for how much, it would depend on many factors, such as the foundation laid in the meridian opening tier, or the quality of the cultivation technique they cultivated. In reality, not many people could achieve such an extreme burst of power of 3 times, and the requirements were too high. Ordinary blood transformation tier elites could only unleash twice the power, and those who could achieve 2.5 times the power could definitely be considered prodigy level. However, Lien Shuerong's explosive power had reached 2.6 times. Bang! Hukan and Lien Shuerong exchanged a blow. Both of their bodies trembled as they fought to a draw. At first glance, Lien Shuerong didn't seem to be at a disadvantage at all. However, she only had such strength because her blood and chi boiled and erupted. Naturally, she was far inferior to Hukan. As expected of Banner Lord Lien, Hukan nodded. Becoming a Banner Lord of one of the 4 great banners at such a young age, your power has increased by more than 2.5 times, right? Lien Shuerong nodded slowly. 2.6 times. How astonishing, Hukan praised. Unfortunately, I've already advanced to 5th change. There's no hope for you to win, let alone leave with 2 people. Lien Shuerong remained silent. The other party was right. It was impossible for her to take Ling Han and Huan Shui away. However, she would definitely not agree if she were to leave just like that. Ling Han is the vice-captain of the Xianxia banner. Even if he has committed a huge crime, he will still be punished according to military law. There is no need for clan leader Hu to interfere, nor is he qualified to interfere, she said coldly after a pause. Ling Han nodded to himself. Although Lien Shuerong was usually cold, when it came to dealing with subordinates, there was indeed nothing to criticize. She was a good superior. Then don't blame me for being impolite. Hukan attacked again. Boom! He leaped over, emitting a terrifying sonic boom. The sound waves reverberated. Pung, pung, pung. The surrounding chairs were all sent flying. The speed of his pounce had already reached the speed of sound. Otherwise, it would be impossible for there to be a sonic boom. It wasn't strange for the speed of punches, palm strikes, and swords to in fact exceed the speed of sound, but it was astonishing for the actual body to reach the speed of sound. This was because this had a terrifying requirement on one's physique. Otherwise, even if one could unleash such a high speed, one's body would still fall apart in the process of running. Their flesh and bones would be torn apart, and it would be a tragic sight. Therefore, the fact that Hukan's physical body could accelerate to the speed of sound meant that his physique was even more terrifying than metal forged from refined iron. Lien Shuerong hurriedly made her move. Facing such a great enemy, she couldn't be careless at all. Haha! Banner Lord Lien, you are still too inexperienced, Hukan said as he attacked. The human figure formed by his blood and chi was also continuously pouncing at Lien Shuerong. This was a pressure on the spiritual level, not a physical attack. However, it was precisely because this was a pressure on the spiritual level that it was impossible to dodge. Lian Xuerong also released her blood and qi, which transformed into a three-legged bird. She fought fiercely with the figure formed from Hu Ken's blood and qi, but there was a gap of 2 small cultivation levels between them. The disparity was too great, and the three-legged bird was quickly torn apart, causing Lian Xuerong's pretty face to turn pale. If one's spirit suffered a setback, it would naturally affect one's body. If it was serious, it was not impossible for one to faint. This was a suppression of cultivation level. Lian Xuerong displayed a strong toughness. Even though her head was splitting right now, it didn't affect much of her battle prowess, and she still resisted tenaciously. Hu Ken sneered. Boom! Crystal-colored blood and qi spewed out of his body, and his power instantly rose to a new height. His blood and qi was boiling as well. A 5th change elite, and with his blood and qi boiling, just how terrifying was his battle prowess. Lian Xuerong immediately felt immense pressure. The situation took a turn for the worse, and she was at a complete disadvantage. Suppress! Hu Ken roared and pressed his palm down, the force changing into a myriad of forms. This was a great move to suppress Lian Xuerong. How could a 3rd change defend against the eruption of a 5th change elite? Just as Lian Xuerong was about to be suppressed, a golden shadow shot out like a snake and coiled around Hu Ken hurriedly retreated, dodging the golden snake's attack. A golden whip appeared in Lian Xuerong's hand. Symbols were glowing. A spirit tool, Hu Ken said with a solemn expression. A spirit tool could greatly increase a cultivator's battle prowess. With or without a spirit tool, it might be 2 different levels of battle prowess. Clan leader Hu, please let me take my men and leave, Lian Xuerong said lightly, but with an indescribable determination. What a joke! Having killed someone in my Hu clan, and you want to leave just like that? Hu Ken sneered. Lian Xuerong, you think too highly of yourself. Do you think you're the only one with a spirit tool? 3rd brother. Go get the spirit tool. Understood. Hu Chaoxing immediately ran into the inner hall. Ling Han, hurry up and leave, Lian Xuerong said. Now was the best time to leave. Otherwise, once Hu Ken also had a spirit tool, she would still be no match for him. Ling Han smiled and said, Banner Lord, Hu Qiu snatched my maidservant, and I came to demand for her return, and I was even targeted by them. They wanted to beat me up and kill me, so I executed Hu Qiu on the spot. However, the Hu clan's attitude is actually still like this, without the slightest bit of repentance. I think that they should all be incarcerated. Incarcerate your head. You're about to lose your life. Lian Xuerong was speechless. How did this freakishly talented subordinate of hers become so stupid? Ha! Ha ha ha! Hu Ken sneered. Captain Ling really hates evil. Unfortunately, your sense of justice will only cost you your life. Ling Han. Lian Xuerong raised her voice. Ling Han stepped forward and said, Banner Lord, help me look after Huan Shui. This place. I'll take care of it. You will take care of it? What could he use to settle it? He was only in the meridian opening tier. Lian Xuerong was speechless. Why was this guy so confident? Young man, you have to know how to restrain yourself. Don't be too arrogant, Hu Ken said coldly. At this moment, Hu Chaoxing had already returned and handed over a sword. Unfortunately, you won't have the chance to learn your lesson. He stared at Ling Han, the long sword in his hand flashing with a cold light. Lian Xuerong wanted to meet the attack head-on, but Ling Han was 1 step ahead of her. He blocked her with his hand and said, Banner Lord, there's no need for you to deal with this kind of trash. I'll deal with him. What high-sounding sentiments! Hu Ken snorted coldly and rushed over. Both of you, come at me together. It'll save me some energy. Lian Xuerong thought about it and took a few steps back. Since Ling Han was so confident, let's take a look at his strength first. In any case, she had already sent someone to inform the city lord manor as soon as she received the news. She believed that in another half an hour or so, the city lord would personally send Butler Mu over. With an extreme bone tier elite holding down the fort, the Hu clan naturally wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Little brat, Hu Kan sneered and pressed down with his palm. Ling Han had no intention of fighting head-on. This was a super elite whose blood and chi was boiling, and facing him head-on would definitely lead to death. He turned his body to the side and then threw a punch. Pong power surged out, surpassing the speed of sound, turning into a huge fist. Petty tricks, Hu Kan sneered. He completely ignored Ling Han's attack and directly charged over. Bam! The force of the punch landed on his body, causing Hu Kan's body to tremble slightly before coming to a halt. This time, Hu Kan's expression was a little awkward. He had just said that it was a small trick and put on a disdainful expression. But in the blink of an eye, he had been stopped by this small trick. Wasn't this a slap in the face? However, Hu Kan was more surprised. A meridian opening tier cultivator could actually stop him. How was this possible? The other party's attack just now was at least 500,000 kilograms of strength. Hu Kan felt a little spooked. If he hadn't been boiling with blood and chi, his power would probably only be slightly stronger than Ling Han's. How could a mere meridian opening tier cultivator possess such terrifying power? If things were already like this now, what would happen in the future? First, he didn't know what was going on. However, how could the Hu clan be trampled on? Thus, he immediately flew into a rage. Earlier, when his third brother gave him the spirit tool, the former had also briefly explained what had happened. He cursed Hu Qiu in his heart. Why did he have to provoke such a guy with limitless potential? If he let Ling Han leave today, then the Hu clan would definitely be wiped out by Ling Han in the future. Since what was done, he could only get rid of this brat and prevent future troubles. Die! Hu Kan activated his ultimate move. His left hand turned into the shape of a claw, and he continuously clawed at Ling Han. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. The force continuously transformed, and one could only see huge claws pressing towards Ling Han, practically covering the sky and earth. Ling Han was unable to fight it head-on, and could only dodge. Fortunately, the limit of his power release was also as far as 30 feet. While dodging, he could also counterattack, so he was not completely passive. Lian Xuerong was shocked. Regardless of whether it was speed or power, Ling Han was completely not inferior to her. The only difference was that Ling Han was unable to boil his blood and chi, which would allow his power to erupt by 2 to 3 times. His meridian opening tier could actually be so strong? She couldn't help but think of that white-robed, omnipotent genius in the imperial capital. He was also a freakish cultivator who could match a blood transformation cultivator while he himself was a meridian opening tier, but could he reach the heights of a 3rd change or 5th change cultivator? Could it be that there was someone who could surpass that freakish person? While she pondered, Ling Han and Hu Kan had already exchanged many moves. He was naturally completely on the defensive, constantly dodging, and would only occasionally counterattack with 1 or 2 punches. But even so, everyone was still shocked. That was a 5th change elite making a move, and his blood and chi was boiling as well. He was currently in his most powerful state of battle prowess. Even this couldn't kill Ling Han in a few moves? Heavens! What kind of monster was this? Ling Han was incomparably calm. He was not as relaxed as others thought he was. Facing a 5th change elite whose blood and chi was boiling, he only needed to make the slightest mistake, and the result would be eternal damnation. Hu Kan's strength was stronger than his, and his speed was faster than his. The only reason he was able to dodge his attacks time and time again was because Ling Han predicted the course of his attacks accurately. Otherwise, when Hu Kan attacked, it would definitely be too late for him to dodge. Ling Han was relying on his experience, but the other party's speed was too fast. Ling Han had to capture the details of Hu Kan's every move, so the pressure was naturally incomparably great. In just 2 minutes, he had already overused his eyes. His eyes felt extremely sore, and his eyes were bloodshot. However, he only needed to hold on for a few more minutes before Hu Kan's outburst period ended. If it was a 5th change, it was not much stronger than him. He could completely deal with it. Hu Kan's expression became uglier and uglier. Previously, he had fought a great battle with Lian Xuerong, and his blood and chi had boiled. Then, he had waited for Hu Chaoxing to retrieve the spirit tool, and had wasted some more time. Thus, when he really fought with Ling Han, he actually only had about 5 minutes left for his power burst. Now, he had used another 2 minutes, but it seemed like Ling Han could still hold on for a few more minutes. He was unable to accept such an outcome. A fifth change elite's blood and chi boiled, yet he was still unable to take down a mere meridian opening tier elite. If word got out, he would become a joke. A huge joke. Since that was the case, who can revealed a cold smile. Wang, the sword in his hand, immediately lit up. To be precise, the 4 symbols on the sword emitted a white light, making it look like a blade made of light. It would definitely be useful as a torch in the dark. Shua, who can slashed out with his sword, and a brilliant sword chi immediately slashed towards Ling Han. It was a full 3 meters long, and its speed was ridiculously fast. Even if Ling Han could predict the sweep of this sword, it was impossible for him to dodge it. Go die! Hukan sneered and heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. This young man was too terrifying. He definitely could not be allowed to mature any further. Ling Han! Lian Shuerong cried out in alarm, and hurriedly brandished the whip in her hand. However, she was too far away, and the whip simply couldn't reach him. However, a smile appeared on Ling Han's face. How could it be that when he clearly knew that the other party had a spirit tool in his hand, and would not be on guard? He had already taken out the broken sword. He also raised his sword. Shua, the symbol shone slightly. Then, he shot out a sword key that was only a foot long, greeting the wide and long flash of sword chi. A spirit tool? When everyone saw this, they said in their hearts. Unexpectedly, this kid could actually obtain an incomparably precious spirit tool. It had to be known that all the spirit tools came from the ancient sites of the previous civilization. Currently, no one could make spirit tools. Thus, spirit tools were extremely precious things. Even the Hu clan only had one. A meridian opening tier brat actually had one too. However, such a spirit tool? Everyone shook their heads in their hearts. The sword was already broken. How much power could it still leave? It was clear just by looking at the length of this sword chi. It was only a foot long. It was simply too weak. Shua, the 2 flashes of sword chi collided. Silently, the 3-meter-long flash of sword chi broke. Then, it began to spread and collapse from where it had been broken before completely disappearing. On the other hand, the foot-long flash of sword chi continued to sweep forward. Fuck! Huken was stunned for a moment before he immediately dodged. Fortunately, his speed had exceeded the speed of sound. Otherwise, it would definitely be difficult for him to dodge this flash of sword chi. Everyone was shocked. What was going on? The sword chi released by a broken sword was actually so terrifying. Huken lowered his head and looked at the sword in his hand. He had a strong suspicion in his heart. Had their 2 swords been swapped? Why did it feel like he was the one that was holding a broken sword? Of course, this was just a thought. Huken revealed a look of wariness, and at the same time, his eyes turned red. The power of this broken sword made him feel a chill. He definitely could not allow it to touch him. What did it mean? Its power definitely surpassed the 5th change, reaching the height of the extreme bone tier. Extreme bone tier. If he could get his hands on it, even if he couldn't crush those in the extreme bone tier, he would at least have a certain amount of say, right? Therefore, he was naturally envious. Lian Shuerong was also shocked. She had never imagined that Ling Han would have such a powerful spirit tool. This fellow's strength had increased rapidly. In Meridian Opening Tier, he already had the power of 3rd change, and now he took out a spirit tool that was Extreme Bone Tier level. What kind of luck was this? Really, if he worked hard alone, it would have been impossible for him to attain such an achievement. Ling Han waved the broken sword and said, "Hu clan, listen up. Immediately kneel down and surrender. Don't stubbornly resist." Hearing this, the Hu clan members were furious. Fuck. This was the Hu clan. The Hu clan, you bastard. Huken also took a deep breath and said balefully, "Captain Ling, you're really arrogant. Even if my Hu clan really committed some crime, it's not up to a mere vice-captain like you to interrogate us. Banner Lord, can this be considered resisting arrest?" Ling Han turned around and asked Lian Shuerong. "Yes." Lian Shuerong said in a low voice. She was considered to have good composure. If you resist arrest, then even if you died, it would be in vain. Ling Han shook his head and took the initiative to attack. Ignorant brat! Hukan sneered and raised his sword to meet the attack. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The two of them continued to fight with their swords. Flashes of sword chi crisscrossed. Pung, pung, pung. Any flash of sword chi that missed tore a hole in the hall. In fact, the sword chi itself did not have much power, but its sharpness was incomparably terrifying, as if it could cut through anything. In addition to fighting with swords, their other hand was not idle either. They threw punches, palm strikes, and claw strikes at each other repeatedly. The scene was incomparably dangerous. Cold sweat rolled down Ling Han's forehead. He needed to make more judgments now, and the burden was naturally greater, making him somewhat unable to hold on much longer. However, Hukan's power burst was about to end. Once the chi and blood began to boil, it was an irreversible process. Therefore, there was only 10 minutes. Only super geniuses or those who had cultivated some extraordinary techniques could exceed the 10-minute limit, but it was not more than a few minutes. Finally, another 2 minutes passed, and Hukan's aura fell. He had now returned to the normal power of a fifth change. Old geezer who, surrender to arrest. Ling Han let out a long cry and switched from defense to offense. Humph! Do you think that you can suppress me just because I don't have my chi and blood boiling? Hukan sneered. Ling Han's original power was weaker than his, so even if he didn't unleash his full power, he wasn't afraid of Ling Han at all. Bang! The two of them exchanged blows. This time, Ling Han did not dodge again. It was also very difficult for him to dodge. When Hukan's explosive period ended, his nerves that had been stretched taut also immediately loosened, giving him a splitting headache. It was simply impossible for him to make a precise judgment. Then let's fight. After the exchange of blows, Ling Han immediately staggered back. He was obviously no match for him. Although Hukan had the upper hand, he revealed a look of shock. This kid's strength was more than 500,000 kilograms. It had reached about 600,000 kilograms. This was already more than an ordinary third change. Heavens! How could there be such a freak? I can't let you live, he said coldly. Regardless of whether it was to get rid of future troubles or to seize the spirit tool in Ling Han's hands, he had to kill Ling Han. Now was a very good excuse. Ling Han had forcefully barged into the Hu residence and publicly killed someone. This was a serious crime and he deserved to die. His expression was cold as he charged towards Ling Han with his sword. You're the one who should die instead of reflecting on yourself and being so overbearing. Ling Han brandished his broken sword to meet the attack. Bang! 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 In this continuous clash, Hukan naturally had to dodge the sword chi that the broken sword shot out. But the force he blasted out also made Ling Han stumble, and blood even flowed out from the corners of his mouth. This made everyone puzzled. There was clearly a huge difference in power, so why was he still foolishly fighting? The members of the Hu clan themselves didn't care. It would be best if Ling Han was killed by the impact just like that. Then, this ending would be very satisfying. Lian Shuerong, on the other hand, was astonished. She didn't believe that Ling Han was such an idiot. Otherwise, how could he have reached such heights in martial arts? What was this guy trying to do? Ling Han gritted his teeth. The other party's strength was too terrifying, and every exchange of blows made him feel as if he was being crushed by a mountain. It was extremely uncomfortable. But why did he still want to fight head-on? Of course, it was to grasp the frequency of Hukan's attacks. Then, he would adjust the frequency of the power overlap and reach a state of synchronization. Then, the other party's power would be crumbled by him. That was what had suddenly occurred to him. If an object could be shattered, then he should be able to do the same to an attack. Therefore, he chose to suffer the pain of feeling like his body was about to explode to prove this point. He was such a person. The greater the pressure, the more motivated he was. Therefore, if he broke through in battle, the time he spent would be far less than the usual comprehension. However, why was the darkness before dawn so long? Pooh! Ling Han suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. That attack just now had triggered all the injuries that he had accumulated previously, causing his stomach to turn upside down. He only felt that stars were flashing wildly in front of his eyes. Die! Hukan seized the opportunity to pursue Ling Han. He wanted to kill Ling Han in one go. Stop! Lien Shuerong shouted and hurriedly waved her whip to block his blow. Ling Han roared loudly and threw a furious punch at Hukan. Bang! The two people's forces collided. Pung pung, a shocking scene appeared. Ling Han was sent flying, while Hukan's figure also swayed, and he retreated continuously. Lien Shuerong couldn't help but stop in her tracks, a look of disbelief on her pretty face. What was going on? Why had Ling Han's power suddenly skyrocketed? He wasn't in the blood transformation tier, so how could his blood and chi boil and erupt? Hukan's face was also filled with surprise. This attack did not do anything to him, but how did a weakling suddenly become so powerful? What secret technique did you use? He asked with a frown. Do you want to know? Ling Han smiled faintly. Fine, surrender, and I'll tell you. It was blatant teasing. Hukan sneered. Do you think you can block 10 or 100 attacks just because you can block one of my attacks? Wrong. I'm not the one blocking. Ling Han took the initiative to attack, his fist exploding out. It's you who will be blocking. Arrogant. Hukan scoffed. What a joke. Did he think he was invincible just because he blocked his attack? He nonchalantly struck out with his palm, striking towards Ling Han. Ling Han's expression was calm, like the water in an ancient well without any ripples. He swung his fist, and the force superimposed 20 times. Bang! Hukan's expression changed drastically when the punch landed. The power he had unleashed was actually completely disintegrated. A terrifying power rushed over, causing him to involuntarily retreat. On the other hand, Ling Han was standing steadily. Hukan's face was a little pale. Under the oscillation of power, he almost vomited. He was actually at a disadvantage in this exchange? How was this possible? What secret technique did you use? His face was full of shock and confusion. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Your innate talent is too poor, so you wouldn't understand even if I told you. In these two attacks, he had already grasped the frequency of Hukan's attacks. Thus, under the overlap of power, he broke through Hukan's attacks. This was also because the difference in strength between the two of them was not too great. If Hukan was in the extreme bone tier, then even if Ling Han grasped the frequency of the other party's attacks, it would be useless. It was just like how a group of people could collapse a bridge, but could a group of ants achieve the same feat? I've already said, you would only be able to block. Ling Han charged out again. Bang! 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 The two of them continued to clash. Hukan was forced back repeatedly. He was clearly at a disadvantage. Seeing this scene, the Hu clan fell silent. What could they say? Even Lien Shuerong was so shocked that her scalp went numb. A meridian opening tier cultivator could actually suppress a 5th change elite. Would anyone believe this? That freakish person from the capital? He was no match. However, Ling Han was well aware of his own suffering. This was because if he wanted to destroy Hukan's attack frequency, he would have to use more than 15 overlapping layers of power. Under such intense consumption, how long could he fight for? It would only be around 10 minutes, which was equivalent to the eruption of a blood transformation tier. Furthermore, when the blood transformation tier's power burst ended, his battle prowess would only fall back to its normal level. However, it was different for him. The power in his body would be completely exhausted, and he would completely lose the ability to fight any further. But could he finish off Hukan in 10 minutes? Ling Han shook his head in his heart. After all, Hukan was a 5th change elite, and he could only suppress him. Furthermore, if Hukan hadn't used up all of his chi and blood long ago, he definitely wouldn't have dared to face him head-on. Otherwise, he would be courting death. Sigh, I'm still a little weak, he sighed. However, if others heard him, they would definitely scold him for being pretentious. You, a meridian opening tier elite, have already suppressed a 5th change elite. What more do you want? Ling Han continued to throw punch after punch, and thought to himself, it's about time to find an excuse to clean up the mess. Otherwise, It won't be easy to clean up the mess. What are you doing? A cold voice sounded. It was not loud, but it was filled with dignity. Ling Han's memory was very good, and he immediately stopped. This was the best opportunity to stop. However, Hukan did not give up. With a loud cry, he still pounced towards Ling Han. Do you want to die? The voice snorted coldly. Then a palm slapped over. Pong, Hukan was immediately sent flying as he spat out blood. This was a suppression of power. Hiss, who was this person? Butler Mu. Lien Shuerong hurriedly bowed respectfully. Although Butler Mu didn't hold any position, he was a genuine extreme bone tier cultivator. So who dared to disrespect him? Only then did Hukan realize that the person who had spoken was actually Butler Mu. He couldn't help but cry out in frustration. He had suffered this slap for nothing. An extreme bone tier had already spoken, yet he still didn't stop. Wasn't he asking for a beating? Greetings, Butler Mu. He forcibly bowed. The gap of a major cultivation level was essentially a crushing advantage. After all, there might only be one monster like Ling Han. Butler Mu glanced at him coldly and said, Banner Lord Lien, what's going on? Reporting to Butler Mu, this is what happened. Lien Shuerong explained everything she knew, without bias on either side. How could Hukan let Lien Shuerong finish speaking? He hurriedly interrupted. Butler Mu, listen to me. Slap. Butler Mu immediately slapped him and said coldly, Did I let you speak? How could Hukan dodge? After taking this blow, half of his face immediately swelled up. Good blow. Ling Han secretly praised Butler Mu in his heart. This master had a very bad temper. Banner Lord Lien, continue. Butler Mu said lightly. Yes. Lien Shuerong nodded and continued. After she finished speaking, Butler Mu looked at Hukan and said, It's your turn. The corners of Hukan's mouth twitched. Only now was he allowed to speak. He no longer had any passion. However, if he did not defend himself now, wouldn't he be convicted? He hurriedly said, Reporting to Butler Mu, this matter is all Ling Han's nonsense. He was clearly the one who sold the maidservant to my little ninth. But on the day of the wedding, he regretted it and came knocking on our door to demand revenge, which led to such a mess. I hope Butler Mu can differentiate clearly the right and wrong. Nonsense. You were the ones who kidnapped me. Huan Shui couldn't help but interrupt. Butler Mu glanced at Huan Shui and retracted his gaze without doing anything. Fuck. Hukan almost went mad from anger. Oh, if I interrupted, you would slap me. Why is there no punishment for this girl's interruption then? This was too differential. But could it be that Hukan still dared to criticize Butler Mu? He could only swallow his anger with a red face. The two of you have completely different stories. Should I believe Ling Han's words? Or yours? Butler Mu looked at Hukan. What a question. Without thinking, Hukan immediately said, This kid is just a small vice-captain of the Xianxia banner. He's a complete soldier ruffian. How could his words be believed? But I'm the clan leader of the Hu clan. My words carry weight. Oh. So you're saying that whoever has a higher status should be trusted? Butler Mu asked. Don't be so straightforward. However, that was indeed the case. Why did no one dare to provoke the 3 major noble clans and the 6 minor noble clans? That was just because they were the 9 forces with the highest status in the city, and whoever provoked them would suffer losses. Butler Mu nodded and said, Since that's the case, I can only trust Ling Han. Pooh. Hukan spluttered. Why? Are you retarded? A vice-captain of the Xianxia banner could surpass him in terms of status? Butler Mu glanced at Hukan with a pitying look, as if the other party was a fool. He said indifferently, Because the Alchemist Society hasn't officially confirmed it, this matter hasn't been publicized. However, I can tell you in advance that there's a second high-level alchemist in Huju City. What? Hukan's mind buzzed, and he almost saw stars. A second high-level alchemist? Although Butler Mu didn't say Ling Han's name, anyone who wasn't a fool could guess that he was referring to Ling Han. High-level alchemist? How was this possible? Hukan could never believe that Ling Han was actually a high-level alchemist. It can't be, right? Even elementary-level alchemists were at least in their 30s or 40s. After all, there were very few prodigies like Zhong Yangbi. However, who would believe that a young man who was not even 20 years old had become a high-level alchemist? The problem was, why was Butler Mu covering up for Ling Han? If the other party was deliberately biased, he could completely distort the facts. Because Butler Mu was in the extreme bone tier. Moreover, Ling Han was in the right in this matter. It was only because he had attacked too ruthlessly and killed Wuxia that the situation had worsened. But even if you're biased, you don't have to use such a ridiculous reason, right? A 20-year-old high-level alchemist? Butler Mu, you must be joking. Hukan chuckled. Butler Mu raised his hand and slapped Hukan again. Instantly, Hukan was sent flying again. Are you worthy for me to joke around with you? Butler Mu said coldly. The members of the Hu clan were angry but did not dare to say anything. Their grand elder had been slapped in the face as if he was being spanked. Who would feel proud? Slapping their grand elder's face was equivalent to slapping the face of the entire Hu clan. Everyone did not feel good. Hukan got up, his expression extremely ugly. Everyone said that things could not be done more than 3 times, but he had been slapped 3 times by Butler Mu in a short period of time. Even a clay figurine would be angry. After all, he was the clan leader of the Hu clan, one of the 6 major noble clans. If you dare to say another word, I'll kill you, Butler Mu balefully said. Instantly, Hukan's open mouth closed involuntarily. The words that were about to come out of his mouth turned into a silent sigh and he swallowed them back into his stomach. Forget it. In comparison, his pride was not as important as his life. Ling Han, how do you want to resolve this? Butler Mu looked at Ling Han with a hint of admiration in his eyes. To be able to match a 5th change in blood transformation tier while he himself was in meridian opening tier, this was unimaginable. Such a prodigy had surpassed everyone. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, the culprit Wuxia has already been executed, but the shock my little handmaiden suffered naturally needs to be compensated. As for me, although I've suffered some injuries, as a member of the Xianxia banner, saving others is my duty, so I don't need compensation. All right. Butler Mu nodded and looked at Hukan. How do you plan to compensate? Hey, aren't you guys going too far? Just deciding things on your own. Was the Hu clan that easy to bully? Hukan sighed. In front of an extreme bone martial artist, the Hu clan was really going to be bullied, unless the Hu clan could get a powerful backer. Please speak, Mississippi. He admitted defeat. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, then just compensate her with 1 million. When the Hu clan heard this, they were furious. 1 million? Why don't you go rob a bank instead? How could a mere maid be worth 1 million? Besides, she was not injured at all. At most, they only had to give her a big red packet of money to calm her nerves. Did it have to be as much as 1 million? Hukan immediately wanted to reprimand Ling Han for demanding an exorbitant price. But when he saw Butler Mu's baleful expression, his heart immediately trembled, and he said, all right, although 1 million was not a small sum. It was not considered a huge sum to a large clan like the Hu clan either. It was not to the extent of really hurting their finances. However, he really could not take this lying down. He waved his hand, and someone immediately took out an optical computer to transfer the money. It was very convenient. Butler Mu looked at Hukan. Don't feel like you've lost out. In the future, you'll know how much you've gained. After offending a high-level alchemist, he only had to pay 1 million. That was too cheap. Of course, he chose to ignore the facts of Wuxia's death and Hu Ronghai's crippled arms. Hukan could only grit his teeth and swallow his anger. He secretly swore that this matter would not end so easily. Let's go. Butler Mu waved his hand and led the way. Ling Han and Lien Shuerong hurriedly followed. But Huan Shui did not move. Young master, the little piggy, she said anxiously. Ling Han gave an "oh." He had forgotten about that lecherous pig. We left a pig here. Hurry up and send it over. He turned around and said, pig. The members of the Hu clan were all furious. It was one thing for you to come here to flaunt your might, but with Butler Mu backing you up, we can only watch helplessly. But you still want to be aggressive and demand our Hu clan for a pig. They couldn't take it anymore. Butler Mu was also a little surprised. Didn't you just get 1 million? Could it be that you don't have the money to buy a pig? Ling Han smiled and said, Butler Mu, this pig of mine is a little special. You can't buy it anywhere. Oh, Butler Mu nodded and looked at Hu Kan. Hu Kan could only grit his teeth and say, all of you, go and find it. The Hu clan was quite efficient. 20 minutes later, a woman walked over with a pig in her arms. There was another Hu clan member beside her. It was him who had found this woman. Ling Han took a look and saw that the little pink pig was currently sprawled out over the woman's breasts, with a look of enjoyment on its face. Lustful pig indeed. Little piggy. Huan Shui quickly ran over and took the little piggy from her arms. That woman was still a little reluctant. The little pink pig's appearance was full of deception. That appearance was too cute because Lien Shuerong's eyes also lit up slightly when she saw it. The little pink pig looked around and saw Lien Shuerong. Indeed, it was the other party's especially shapely breasts that made it unable to help but drool. It immediately struggled as if it wanted to break free from Huan Shui's embrace and rush towards Lien Shuerong. What a lecherous pig! Ling Han picked up the little pink pig and said, all right, let's go. The four of them filed out. After leaving the Hu clan, Butler Mu said to Ling Han, follow me. Ling Han nodded, tossed the little pink piglet to Huan Shui, and said, you and Banner Lord Lien return to the camp first. Huan Shui hurriedly nodded. She kept thinking that it was because of her that such great trouble had been caused, so she naturally became more obedient. Lien Shuerong left with Huan Shui and didn't ask any further questions. She didn't have the right to interfere with what an extreme bone tier elite wanted to do. However, she naturally believed that Butler Mu had no ill intentions towards Ling Han. Walk with me, Butler Mu said. Ling Han nodded, his expression calm. Firstly, he had the heart of an elite. Secondly, he was a high-level alchemist, and his status was not inferior to Butler Mu's at all. Young friend, I originally thought that your natural talent in alchemy was outstanding. I didn't expect you to be so freakish in martial arts as well, Butler Mu praised. Ling Han merely smiled slightly and said, thank you for the compliment. Therefore, I have a favor to ask of you, Butler Mu said solemnly. Ling Han was astounded. An extreme bone tier elite was actually requesting his help? Was it to concoct an alchemical pill? He paused for a moment and said, Butler Mu, please speak. Ultimately, he owed Butler Mu a favor for today's matter, so if Butler Mu wanted to ask him to refine an alchemical pill, he didn't mind helping as long as the ingredients were ready. Butler Mu smiled and said, if there's a chance, please take young miss away. This wasn't right. If this was said by Feng Zixing, Ling Han would be able to understand a little. For example, if Feng Zixing had betrayed the country or suffered a strife, his status would not be guaranteed. If he was reduced to the point of fleeing, he might indeed need to entrust his daughter into someone else's care. But if it was Butler Mu, what position did he have to make this request? Ling Han looked at Butler Mu in surprise. Although you're the Feng clan's butler, aren't you interfering a little too much? Butler Mu shook his head. Do you think young Miss will be happy if she marries a man she has never met for the sake of benefits? Ling Han chuckled and asked, then why won't Butler Mu bring Miss Feng away? He was only in the Meridian opening tier, and even if he could barely match a 5th change blood transformation tier, he was still far inferior to the extreme bone tier. No matter how he looked at it, Butler Mu was more suitable than him, right? Butler Mu looked at him and said after a while, I hope you can consider this matter carefully. Also, I hope you can help young Miss when she needs help. This is the shuttle steps technique. He took out a thin book from his pocket. The paper quality was very new. Consider this as your pay. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, as long as it's within my capabilities, I'll help. All right, Butler Mu nodded. He tossed the book to Ling Han, then strode away. Shuttle steps, Ling Han muttered. As he walked, he flipped through the book. Illustrations immediately entered his eyes, and mnemonic chants continuously appeared in his mind. Not bad. After using it, you can increase your speed by 3 times. However, this consumes too much mystical power. In addition, it also has a huge requirement on one's physique. Otherwise, as you run, both your legs might be crippled in the process. Going by this, I owe him a big favor. A strange expression appeared on Ling Han's face. Putting aside the question of whether Butler Mu's point of view was correct or not, he was just a butler. Wasn't it a little too much for him to be so concerned about Feng Ruoxian? It was confirmed. This wasn't the attitude of a butler at all. It was more like the attitude of a father. Could it be that Feng Ruoxian was the illegitimate daughter of Butler Mu? All of a sudden, countless thoughts of gossip arose in Ling Han's mind. I don't need to deliberately pay attention to her. If Feng Ruoxian really begs me, then I'll help her as much as I can. However, as long as she's in Huju City, what kind of trouble will she encounter? Forget it. Let's go back to camp. A night passed, and Ling Han first invited son Jianfang to the campsite. There was only 1 day left until the deadline the little old man had mentioned. He did not know what would happen tomorrow, so he could only try his best to prepare. Ling Han took the book about shuttle steps and carefully studied it. With his comprehension ability, it naturally came easily to him. In just half a day, he was already able to use this movement technique. He sprinted with all his might and used shuttle steps. His speed instantly increased, but he did not accelerate to the maximum. This was necessary. This was because his speed was already close to the speed of sound. After running, the air resistance was extremely huge, causing him to suffer a huge burden. Now that he had increased his speed by a little more, the bones in his entire body were already creaking. Could he break through the speed of sound? Ling Han's strength was comparable to 3rd change blood transformation tier, but his physique was definitely much weaker. After all, his level of being was 1 whole cultivation level lower than blood transformation tier. Breaking through the speed of sound was an ability that only blood transformation tier elites possessed, and it was determined by their physique. Ling Han circulated his mystical power within his body, and then his footsteps sped up. Pong! A huge sonic boom sounded behind him, and sand and stones were sent flying in all directions. He had reached the speed of sound. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face. With the use of shuttle steps, his speed finally broke through the sound barrier. It could be said that this speed alone could form an extremely destructive force. If he ran wildly on the streets, the sonic boom formed could make the people nearby deaf, shatter glass windows, and even cause houses to collapse. Only half a minute later, Ling Han couldn't take it anymore, and had no choice but to stop. He felt his entire body heating up, especially his legs, as if they were about to burn. My current limit is to sprint at the speed of sound for half a minute, at most 40 seconds. Otherwise, my body might disintegrate. Ling Han muttered to himself. Is there a way to temper my body? Ling Han went back to research, and very quickly discovered that there was indeed a way to improve his physique. It was no other than to have his physique tempered by various forces from a young age to increase the strength of his muscles and bones. He also had to use medicine for direct ingestion or soak himself in a medicinal bath to stimulate the strength of his cells. This consumption is very high. It also requires consistent perseverance. It's impossible to support this consumption of various resources without strong financial resources. On the contrary, as long as mystical power is used to cover the body, it can have the same or even better defensive effect. Therefore, very few people are willing to spend this time and money to temper their bodies. Ling Han shook his head. He had started his career in the Genesis world with body refinement, and had directly obtained a body refinement precious technique that was heavenly venerable tier level, causing his physique to be incomparably tyrannical. Even if he encountered an opponent whose cultivation level was much higher than his, he would not be afraid, and his opponent would not be able to injure him at all. There's no body refining technique for sale here, so it's unrealistic for me to hope to be able to buy one. Could I use the indestructible Heaven's Scroll? Yes, the two worlds are completely different, but I'm still me. Nothing has changed. The indestructible Heaven's Scroll is useless to others, but I'm different because I came from the Genesis world. I'm sure it won't work if I use it exactly as it is, but I can make some modifications. Ling Han's eyes grew brighter and brighter. He had stood at the peak of the world in the Genesis world. It wasn't difficult to improve a heavenly venerable tier-level technique, but the difficult part was how to merge it with this world. If the indestructible heaven scroll can be improved, how many other secret techniques can I take out into this world? Let's give it a try. Ling Han immediately returned to the campsite and began to think hard. He was the type to be very patient sometimes, and sometimes he was super impatient. He would do something immediately the moment he thought of it. All the way from morning to midnight, Ling Han finally made some progress. It's feasible. It's really feasible. He nodded. However, this requires a huge change. If I change it like this, perhaps everyone in this world can cultivate it. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! At this moment, a sharp voice sounded in the sky above the camp. Clang! 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 The alarm sounded. Ling Han was quick-witted. Half a month's time was up. What kind of enemy could make it so unsafe to stay in the city? Ling Han hurriedly scuttled out. At this time, most people had already come out, because Lian Xuerong had already made preparations. Not a single person slept at night, and everyone was fully armed, without the slightest bit of disheveled appearance. Enemy attack? How many people are there? Lian Xuerong also appeared and asked very calmly. On the watchtower high above, the soldier's face was twitching. He lowered his head and said in a trembling voice, Countless. What? There were so many enemies that they could not be counted? Lian Xuerong bent her legs slightly and then suddenly burst out with astonishing strength. Pung, like a meteor, she darted towards that sentry tower. She looked into the distance and her expression immediately changed. She shouted down, Prepare for battle. The beast tide is coming. Beast tide, it was actually a beast tide. Ling Han was astonished. Previously, he had been wondering what kind of disaster would be striking on this day. Perhaps it was a terrifying weapon of mass destruction, such as the strongest nuclear bomb from more than 100 years ago. If that one fell, Huju City would no longer exist. However, all these weapons had long been collected by the Dark North Majestic Empire, and it was impossible for anyone to take it out. If it really appeared, it meant that this force really had extraordinary abilities. The other possibility was to mobilize an army that far exceeded Huju City. Otherwise, with the advantage of city defense, they would only be courting death. Moreover, this had to be a crushing advantage. Otherwise, as long as they were delayed for 2 days, reinforcements would arrive. Similarly, they would not be able to destroy the city. Thus, Ling Han had been wondering how Huju City could be turned into a land of death. So it was a beast tide. However, the problem was that a beast tide was naturally initiated by demonic beasts. High-level demonic beasts could command low-level ones, and only after a certain scale was formed could it be called a beast tide. If there were a few hundred of them, it could only be considered a small scuffle, not a tide. It was very rare for humans and demonic beasts to get along harmoniously. Even among demonic beasts, as long as their races were different, they would kill each other. Therefore, the probability of a beast tide appearing was extremely low. That was unless a demonic beast with extraordinary abilities appeared and took command of a group of beasts. Then, there was a possibility of a beast tide forming. Therefore, this should not be engineered. That mysterious force was too terrifying. They could even unleash a beast tide? With this thought in mind, Ling Han had already taken out the broken sword and said, Huan Shui, follow behind me and don't fall behind. Yes, young master. Huan Shui hugged the little pink pig tightly. She didn't know what the words beast tide meant, but seeing everyone's extremely nervous expressions, she was also affected and became very nervous. Goo! The lecherous pig let out a miserable cry. That was because it was held too tightly by Huan Shui. Its neck was about to break. Ignore it, it's just pretending, Ling Han said casually, looking ahead. The little pink piggy looked at him with hatred. What a detestable fellow. He kept interrupting its cute and pitiful act. Rumble, the ground shook. The densely packed trees in front of them fell in large numbers. The beast tide was about to arrive. Bang! The bushes at the front collapsed. and a huge white rhinoceros that was 15 meters long rushed out. It landed heavily on the ground with an indestructible force, causing the ground to tremble. Pung, 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 more demonic beasts rushed out from behind it. There were colorful tigers, green goats, and thick and long pythons. There were all kinds of them, and each of them had an ominous glint in their eyes. Electromagnetic cannon! Lien Shuerong shouted softly. Instantly, 5 lightning pillars shot out. These pillars of light were so thick that a man could wrap his arms around one, and their range was at least 1,000 meters. Their power was incomparably terrifying, and when the pillars of light touched them, those demonic beasts immediately exploded. The beams of light shot out and lasted for a full 2 seconds, forming an unusually long beam of light. With this strike, at least 200 to 300 demonic beasts were killed. Recharge! Lien Shuerong continued to issue orders. Team 2, go! Hong, another 5 beams of light shot out and intersected with each other. In just 2 waves of attacks, thousands of demonic beasts had died. Team 3. Team 4. The Xianxia banner had a total of 20 electromagnetic cannons, which were divided into 4 groups. This was because the electromagnetic cannons needed to be recharged after being used, and the recharge time was as long as 10 minutes. Naturally, it was impossible to push them all out at once. However, there were too many in the beast tide. Even if the electromagnetic cannons were divided into 4 groups, they were still all used up in 4 minutes. In other words, for the electromagnetic cannon to work again, one would still have to wait 6 minutes. By this time, it would be far too late. Boom, countless demonic beasts charged over and crushed towards the Xianxia banner. Kill! Lien Shuerong stood at the front and took out her whip. Ling Han also walked to the front. His strength was comparable to Lien Shuerong's, so he naturally couldn't hide at the back. The first demonic beast had already rushed over. It was a large dog with a strange appearance. Its head was extremely small, but its body was incomparably huge. 12 meridians. Ling Han made a judgment in his heart. He brandished the broken sword, and there was no need to activate it at all. With a slash of the sword, that demonic beast had already been forcefully sliced into 2. It did not take much effort at all. Ling Han knew that this would be a protracted battle, and he needed to conserve as much power as possible. Charge! The warriors of the Xianxia banner roared and drew their swords to face the beast tide. With Ling Han and Lien Shuerong acting as the arrowheads, the pressure on the others was greatly reduced. Moreover, the main force of the beast tide was only at the meridian opening tier, so they would have no problems for the time being. Hong, the beast tide surged past, and most of the demonic beasts continued to surge towards the city. How could a team of a mere 100 people detain too many demonic beasts? Oh no! Lien Shuerong exclaimed. The electromagnetic cannon needed to be recharged, so it could only be recharged at a fixed location, some distance away from them. Therefore, when it was attacked by a demonic beast, the recharging equipment was immediately destroyed. Not good. The demonic beasts are going to invade the city. Retreat to the city. Ling Han, you take the lead, Lien Shuerong said. All right. Ling Han didn't say anything else, and immediately leaped out, arriving at the rear of the entire group. With a turn of his body, he became the vanguard. Forward with me, he shouted. Understood. They pushed forward, but the demonic beasts continued to charge forward, greatly affecting their speed. At this rate, it will take us at least an hour to reach the city, Lien Shuerong said. If such a terrifying beast tide surged into the city, how terrifying would the damage be in an hour? Ling Han also frowned. No wonder the little old man wanted him to leave, and Jia Deyuan even said that he would not be able to escape death even if he returned to Huju City. The number of these demonic beasts was endless, but there would be a limit to their manpower. Even they could block the next wave or 2 waves, then what about 10 or 20 waves? Bang! A huge tremor sounded, as if there was an earthquake. Then, there was a commotion from behind. Ling Han turned to look, and couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. It was a mammoth, a true mammoth. It was more than 90 meters tall, and each of its legs was as thick as a house. Every step it took shook the earth and mountains. With such a terrifying physique, Even if its cultivation wasn't too high, just its physical strength was already incomparably terrifying. Even extreme bone tier elites would be left speechless, right? Hong, although this giant elephant's steps seemed to be slow, because its legs were really too long, every step it took covered a distance of over 300 meters. In just a few steps, the giant elephant's huge foot stepped towards them. The black mass seemed to cover the sky and earth. Lien Xuerong shouted and charged towards this huge creature. She waved the long whip in her hand and lashed at the giant elephant. Pa! The whip struck the foot of the giant elephant, and a golden light flashed. The giant elephant let out a painful roar, and its foot slipped and stepped onto the side. Hong! The ground shook violently like a rippling carpet. A blood transformation tier-level demonic beast. Ling Han took a look and immediately concluded that boiling qi and blood was astonishing to the extreme, revealing its fiendishness, causing the faces of all the warriors to turn deathly pale. Merely continuing to stand was a huge burden. Lien Xuerong shouted again. She raised her whip and attacked. This giant elephant was not only in the blood transformation tier, but its size was also really too big. With just a single step, its destructive power to ordinary people would be incomparably terrifying. Shua! The giant elephant swung its long trunk which whipped towards Lien Xuerong like it was a tall building. Lien Xuerong leaped up. She could no longer change her trajectory and could only fight head-on with this giant elephant. Bang! She pressed down with her palm, and then she was sent flying into the crowd of demonic beasts in the distance. In contrast, the giant elephant only trembled slightly. Its astonishing size had made a contribution. To send it flying, they would probably have to mobilize extreme bone tier elites. Why was it said that demonic beasts were stronger than martial artists of the same level? This was the reason. Banner Lord! The warriors of the Shenqing banner shouted. Banner Lord Lien is fine. Everyone follow me quickly. Ling Han said loudly. Lien Xuerong was a third change blood transformation tier, so even if she was no match, she could easily escape. However, if everyone wanted to stay here and not leave, then they would only be trampled to death by the giant elephant. Leave! Lien Xuerong's voice came from afar, full of vigor. When everyone heard this, they were relieved and quickly ran away. However, how could they run fast in such an environment? In just a few breaths, the giant elephant had already made a comeback and stomped down again. It was as if the heavens were collapsing, terrifying to the extreme. Ling Han could not do anything else. He could only leap high into the air and then throw a punch. Bang! This punch was solid, and Ling Han felt as if an entire celestial body was crushing down on him. His chest felt like it was boiling, and it was extremely uncomfortable. This was because he had released his strength. Otherwise, if this foot had stepped on him solidly, he would have been 10 times more miserable. He fell and barely managed to turn around, allowing his feet to land on the ground first. He swayed on his feet and he almost fell down. Fortunately, the giant elephant was also slightly deflected by this punch. Pong! The giant foot landed 9 meters away from them, setting off a powerful shockwave that caused the nearby people and demonic beasts to be thrown off their feet. Brother Ling! The other soldiers hurriedly called out. Ling Han waved his hand and said, I'm fine. He activated the broken sword in his hand and slashed out. Instantly, a not-so-brilliant flash of sword chi immediately slashed towards the giant elephant. Pooh! When the sword chi entered the elephant's calf, blood spurted out. There was also the sound of the elephant in pain. It was incomparably loud and shook the surroundings. The broken sword was a spirit tool, and its level might be extremely high. Therefore, although the sword chi slashed out did not have much power, its sharpness was incomparably shocking, causing great damage to this giant elephant. Pong! The giant elephant flailed its trunk in pain. Pong! 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 The elephant's trunk crushed through the ground, and dozens of demonic beasts were instantly smashed to death, turning into a bloody mist. This made the warriors of the Shenqing banner shiver. If they were hit by the elephant's trunk, they would definitely end up like this. Let's go! Sun Jianfang jumped out. He led the way in front, with Ling Han bringing up the rear. Although he had just advanced into the blood transformation tier, he was still the third elite in the team after all. Now that Lien Shuerong was charging over from afar, he didn't shirk his responsibilities and took over the responsibility of opening the path for the vanguard. The giant elephant went berserk. It didn't care about anything else and trampled everywhere. It was simply the best description of a terrible teammate. In just a few moments, hundreds of demonic beasts were trampled to death by it. Its efficiency was shockingly high. Ling Han couldn't help but be delighted. If this giant elephant was used well, it could completely be used as a super-killing weapon to annihilate the beast tide. However, before he could rejoice for long, the giant elephant actually calmed down unbelievably. Its eyes flashed with a blood-red ferocious light as it stared at him. Fuck! The giant elephant raised its trunk high into the air, and then viciously whipped it towards Ling Han. It was a blood transformation tier demonic beast to begin with, and with its huge body and astonishing brute force, if it waved its trunk that was like a skyscraper to attack, this destructive power would probably cause even extreme bone tier cultivators to frown, right? If he wanted to kill this demonic beast, he could only avoid confronting it head-on, slaughter his way in through its eyes and ears, and directly crush its brain. Otherwise, if he were to face it head-on, he believed that even extreme bone tier elites would have to spend some effort to deal with it. Spread out! Ling Han shouted loudly. He exerted all his strength to meet the strike and block the brunt of the strike. Bang! His entire body was sent flying. The force of 500,000 kilograms was indeed very strong, but against this giant elephant, it only made its trunk pause slightly. The Shenqing banner warriors immediately scattered like birds. If they were still gathered together, they would only die quickly. However, even so, this flick of the trunk still sent 7 warriors flying. Before they landed, they were already dead. Damn it! Ling Han roared furiously. He brandished the broken sword and continuously shot out sword chi. Pu, Piu, Piu, Piu. The size of the giant elephant was an advantage, but at the same time it also became a huge target, and there was almost no way to dodge any attack. Pu, Piu, Piu, Piu. The sword chi continuously slashed into the giant elephant's body, causing it to roar in pain. However, this time it did not lose control. Instead, its eyes became even more bloodshot and savage as it stared fixedly at Ling Han. On the other side, Lien Shuerong had already charged over and was reassembling her team. Ling Han was slightly relieved. He roared and said, "I'll go kill this giant elephant." Xiao, his figure shot up, and with a leap, he had already leaped onto one of the giant elephant's legs. The giant elephant's leg hair was like long spears, thick, hard, and long. Ling Han used it as a platform, and with a series of stomps, he quickly headed towards the giant elephant's head. Although the giant elephant was an obvious target, if one wanted to kill it, they had to slash sword chi into its eyes and ears. If they were still standing below, it would be very difficult to hit it. Moreover, the giant elephant was not stupid. It was indeed difficult to dodge with its huge body, but it only needed to tilt its head. Thus, Ling Han had to go up. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. In just a few moments, Ling Han had already appeared on one of the giant elephant's tusks. He was just about to slash at its eyes when he suddenly felt his spirit go into a trance, as if something was trying to possess him. The purple pendant glowed slightly, and Ling Han's spiritual power was also counterattacking. Boom, this evil will was driven out of his mind. Ling Han was shocked. He raised his head and looked up, only to see that there was actually a demonic beast sitting on top of the giant elephant's head. It was like a tiger, but it had no fur, and its entire body was covered with tentacles that were a foot long. This was the kind of demonic beast that was good at spiritual control from Thousand Lotus Mountain. It turned out that it was controlling the giant elephant.